He cried for the first time in front of me, and it changed everything. When you start dating someone new, you think you're prepared for the little surprises, quirks, preferences, family drama, but you never really expect the moment that breaks down every wall between you. For me, that happened last weekend when my boyfriend, Adam, cried for the first time in front of me. We've been together for about 8 months. It's been easy, in that soft, comforting way where you just fit. We met through mutual friends at a brewery night, hit it off immediately, and went on our first date that same week. He's calm, steady, always composed, the kind of guy who listens more than he talks, who makes you feel safe without even trying. But there's always been this small part of him that felt a little guarded, not distant exactly, just careful. When I'd ask about his past, he'd share bits and pieces, but I could tell there was more he wasn't saying. I didn't push. Everyone opens up in their own time. This past weekend, we went upstate for a short getaway, a little cabin, just the two of us. No phones, no distractions. The plan was to relax, cook, hike, maybe watch bad movies by the fire. It was supposed to be lighthearted, and for the most part, it was. Until Saturday night, we were sitting on the porch after dinner, wrapped in blankets, drinking wine while it rained lightly. The air smelled like pine and wet earth. I asked him something random, something like, "Do you think you'll ever move closer to your parents again?" And he just went quiet. I thought maybe I'd said something wrong. He stared out into the trees for a while before he said, almost under his breath, "I haven't talked to my dad in 6 years." That alone surprised me. He never mentioned family problems before. I asked gently if he wanted to tell me what happened. He hesitated for a long time, then started talking. Apparently, his parents had a rough marriage. His dad was strict, old school, the type of man who thought showing emotion was weakness. When Adam was in college, his mom got sick, breast cancer, and his dad refused to let her stop working or get proper treatment right away. Said they couldn't afford to act scared. By the time she was diagnosed, it was stage 4. She passed away a few months after Adam graduated, and on the day of her funeral, his dad told him, "You need to pull yourself together and stop crying." She wouldn't want weakness in her family. That was the last thing his father ever said to him. He told me that after that day, he blocked his dad's number, moved states, and never looked back. He built his own life and didn't talk about her much because it hurt too much. While he was telling me this, his voice stayed steady at first. But when he said, "She would have loved you," it cracked. His eyes watered, and before I could even react, he covered his face with his hands and just broke down. It wasn't loud, it wasn't messy, it was quiet, like he'd been holding it in for years and finally ran out of space to keep it hidden. I didn't say anything, I just sat next to him, wrapped my arm around his shoulders, and let him cry. He leaned against me, head on my shoulder, and whispered, "I'm sorry, I don't cry. I'm so sorry." I told him not to be sorry. I told him it was okay, that he didn't have to be strong all the time, and something about that seemed to undo him even more. He cried harder, but it wasn't ugly. It was human. Honest, we sat like that for a long time. The rain got heavier, and the sound of it hitting the roof filled the silence between us. Eventually, he just exhaled and said, "I didn't realize how much I missed her until right now," I said. "She sounds like she was amazing." He nodded. She used to sing when she cooked. She made everything feel safe. I think I've been trying to find that feeling again ever since. That's when I felt it. This deep ache that wasn't pity, wasn't even sadness, just empathy. The kind that makes you realize someone isn't just who they are now. They're every version of themselves that came before. Every scar, every silence. Every time they were told to hide how they feel, we went inside after that. I made him tea while he changed his shirt because it was damp from the rain. He looked different when he came back out. Lighter somehow. We didn't talk much for the rest of the night. We just lay there, his head against my chest, his breathing slow and steady. The next morning, he apologized again for losing it. I told him not to. I said, "That wasn't losing it. That was you being real." He smiled a little and said, "I've never done that before. Not like that." And I knew what he meant. It wasn't about the tears. It was about trust. Something shifted between us that night. Not in a dramatic, movie scene way, but in the quiet way people fall a little deeper in love. When we got back to the city, he sent me a text later that night that said, "Thanks for not trying to fix it, just being there was enough." I think about that a lot. How sometimes love isn't about solving someone's pain, but sitting with them in it, letting them feel it without shame. It's been a week since then, and things feel different in small, subtle ways. He's a little more open now. He'll hold my hand a little longer, make eye contact a bit deeper. Last night, while we were cooking dinner, he started humming, a soft tune under his breath. When I asked what it was, he smiled and said, "My mom used to sing this while making pasta." That moment almost broke me. Not because it was sad, but because it was healing. Like he was finally letting pieces of her back into his life. I don't know where this relationship will go long term, but I know one thing. That night on the porch changed everything. Because when someone trusts you enough to let you see the part of them they've hidden from the world, it's not just love, it's the purest kind of connection there is. And I'll never forget the sound of that rain, the smell of pine, and the moment he finally let himself be seen. It's been a few months since that night at the cabin, and I can honestly say something changed between us after it. It wasn't dramatic or obvious at first, but I could feel the difference in the small things. Like how Adam stopped holding himself so tightly, how he'd let out these quiet laughs more often, or how he'd sometimes start a story about his mom without me having to ask. It was like that night opened a door he didn't even realize was still locked. For a while I didn't bring up his dad. I figured if he wanted to talk about him, he would. But one night, while we were making dinner, he was chopping onions, and I was leaning against the counter scrolling through my phone. He said, "I think I want to call him." I set my phone down and asked, "Your dad?" He nodded but didn't look up. "Yeah, I don't even know what I'd say. I keep thinking about how much time has passed." I didn't push. I just said, "If you do it, I'll be here." He didn't call that night, or the next week, but I knew he was thinking about it. Every now and then, I'd catch him staring at old photos on his phone. Most of them blurry or scanned, but his mom's smile was always clear. Then one evening, while we were watching a movie, his phone buzzed. He picked it up, stared at it for a few seconds, and said, "It's my aunt." He hadn't spoken to her since his mom's funeral either. He stepped outside to take the call, and when he came back in, his eyes looked a little glassy. "She said my dad's been asking about me," he said quietly. "Apparently he had a heart issue last year. He's not doing great." I reached out and took his hand. "You don't have to see him if you're not ready." He squeezed my hand. "I know, but I think I want to." The next weekend, we drove to his hometown. It was about a 4-hour trip, and we barely talked most of the way there. He just stared out the window, lost in his thoughts. When we pulled up to his dad's house, I could tell he was shaking. He didn't ask me to come in with him, and I didn't offer. I just told him, "Take your time. I'll be right here." He was gone for nearly 2 hours. When he came back out, his face was blotchy, his eyes red, but he looked lighter. I asked how it went, and he said, "It was hard, but I'm glad I went." Later, as we drove back, he told me his dad had cried, too. Apparently, his dad apologized for how he'd handled everything after his mom's death. That he'd been scared and angry, and didn't know how to show it. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. Adam told me, "It's weird. I thought I hated him, but I think I just missed him." That night, when we got home, he fell asleep with his head in my lap. And I remember just sitting there, brushing his hair back, realizing how proud I was of him. It takes courage to face something that's hurt you for that long. Since then, he's called his dad a few times. They're not close, not yet, but they're trying, and Adam seems freer, happier. He started therapy too. He told me he didn't want to carry around the weight of what happened anymore. Some weeks are easier than others, but he's doing the work. And me? I've learned a lot about love through all this. That being there for someone doesn't always mean fixing things. It's about standing next to them while they find the strength to fix them themselves. The other night, we went for a walk around the lake near our apartment. The sun was setting, the water all orange and gold, and Adam turned to me and said, "You know, I didn't think I'd ever let anyone see that side of me. I didn't even think I could," I told him. "That's what love's for, to make space for the parts we don't show anyone else." He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "You were the first person who didn't make me feel broken for being human. It's strange how one moment, one night of rain and silence, can ripple through everything after it." But it did. That night didn't just change how he saw himself. It changed how we saw each other. And now, when he hums while cooking, or calls his dad to check in, or talks about his mom like she's still a part of his world, I know he's healing. And I know I got to witness something real. It's been about a year since that trip to Adam's hometown, and life looks completely different now. Not in a flashy or dramatic way, just calmer, steadier. Like everything finally settled into place after years of being off balance. Adam's been going to therapy consistently, every Thursday evening. He leaves work a little early, grabs a coffee, and sits with a therapist named Mark who he says actually gets it. He still has days when old memories hit hard, but he doesn't shut down the way he used to. He talks. Sometimes it's just a few words. Sometimes it's an hour-long rant about how grief never really leaves. But he talks, and that's something I don't take for granted anymore. A few months ago, he invited me to come with him to visit his dad again. This time it wasn't tense or painful. His dad, Robert, greeted me with this nervous smile, like he was afraid I wouldn't like him, but he was gentle, kind of quiet, and kept saying how grateful he was that Adam had someone steady in his life. We stayed for dinner, and it felt normal, like a family dinner should. That night, as we drove back home, Adam said, "It's weird. I used to avoid thinking about him at all. Now I just wish we'd done this sooner." I could tell that regret still lingered, but it wasn't eating him alive anymore. It was more like a shadow that he'd finally learned to walk beside. Around the same time, we started talking about moving in together. I'll admit, I hesitated at first. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew what it meant for him. How much trust it took for Adam to fully share a space with someone. But when he said, "I want you here when I wake up. I don't want to keep saying goodbye every night," that hesitation melted. So we found a small house on the edge of town. It's not fancy, but it has a big window that looks out over the trees. And on quiet mornings, the sunlight hits just right. Adam said it reminds him of the lake where we had our first real conversation about his mom. I think he liked the idea of starting a new chapter somewhere that felt open, peaceful. After we moved in, life just started flowing in small, beautiful ways. Sunday mornings turned into coffee and pancakes on the porch. Evenings were full of music. Adam bought an old record player from a thrift shop, and now it's our background soundtrack for everything. He laughs more now, deeper and louder. The kind of laugh that makes you laugh too, even if you don't know why. Then one night, something happened that caught me completely off guard. It was late, close to midnight, and I was sitting at the kitchen table finishing up some work. Adam walked in, barefoot, holding a small box. He looked nervous, but in that warm, happy kind of way. He set the box in front of me and said, "Before you open it, there's something I want to say." I felt my heart skip a beat, but I didn't say anything. He took a deep breath. "You've seen every version of me, the quiet, broken, angry ones. You saw me cry for the first time, and you didn't pull away. You stayed. You helped me see that it's okay to need someone. That love doesn't make me weak." Then he smiled, soft, almost shy, and said, "I want to spend my life making sure you never regret choosing me." Inside the box was a ring. Simple. Elegant. Nothing flashy. I started crying before I could even answer. He didn't get down on one knee. He just held my hands and said, "So will you?" Of course I said yes. The funny thing is, when I tell people about that night, they always expect some grand story. Music playing, candles lit, a perfect setup. But the truth is, it was perfect because it was honest. Because it was him, because it was us. Since then, we've been planning a small wedding for next spring. Nothing huge, just close friends, family, and a quiet ceremony by the lake. The same lake where Adam first opened up to me about his mom. He said it felt right to start our next chapter where he'd first learned how to let someone in. The other day, we were walking by that same lake, and he said, "You know, I used to think crying in front of someone was the most humiliating thing. But now, I think it was the first real thing I ever did." I smiled and told him, "That's because it was the first time you let yourself be seen." He looked at me for a long time, then said, "You saved me, you know." And I told him the truth. "You saved yourself? I just stood next to you while you did it." There's something beautiful about watching someone rebuild themselves piece by piece and knowing you got to be part of that process. Adam isn't just my fiancé now. He's my reminder that people can change, that pain doesn't have to be permanent, that love really can be the safest place in the world when it's honest. Sometimes, when he's asleep, I look over at him and think about that first night in the cabin, the storm, his trembling voice, the way he finally let it all out. It's wild to think that moment was the start of everything that came after. Now when he reaches for my hand, it's not out of fear. It's out of love, out of peace, out of knowing that no matter what comes next, we've already weathered worse and come out stronger on the other side. He's not the same man I met. He's softer, surer, and more open than I ever thought he could be. And I think, in a way, I've changed too, because when you love someone through their healing, You heal parts of yourself too, and every now and then, when we're sitting quietly and he hums under his breath, I can still hear that same tone from the night it all began. But now, it's not a sound of sadness, it's peace. Stories number 2. He hit me over a pair of socks, and I don't know what to do now. I'm 19 and still living at home while I attend community college. My mom remarried about 2 years ago to a guy named Greg. At first, things were fine. He seemed quiet, polite, a little too strict maybe, but nothing alarming. My mom was happy for the first time in years, and I wanted to give him a chance. But over time, little things started to pile up. Greg had this way of turning every small mistake into a moral lesson. If I forgot to rinse a dish properly, he'd lecture me about respecting other people's effort. If I didn't immediately answer when he called my name, he'd accuse me of ignoring authority. It was uncomfortable, but I kept my head down because my mom said he just came from a strict household. Then a few weeks ago, something happened that I can't shake. I had just finished showering after a long day of classes and work. I was exhausted, half asleep, and I accidentally left my socks on the bathroom floor. I figured I'd grab them when I came back from getting a drink. When I walked back toward the bathroom, Greg was standing in the hallway holding the socks. He had this tight look on his face, jaw clenched. He said, "You left these on the floor," I said. "Yeah, sorry." I was gonna grab them. He didn't respond right away. He just stared at me, like he was trying to decide what to say. Then, out of nowhere, he muttered, "You have no respect," and slapped me. Hard, across the face. It wasn't a punch, but it was enough to sting and shock me into silence. I just froze. I think my brain needed a second to register what had just happened. Then I heard my mom call from the kitchen. Asking what was going on, Greg turned and yelled, "Nothing? We're fine." Then he looked at me again and said quietly, "Don't test me in my house." He walked off, leaving me standing there with my cheek burning. That night, I locked my door. I didn't tell my mom right away because I didn't even know how to process it. I kept replaying it in my head, thinking maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe it wasn't as bad as it felt, but the next morning, I saw him at the breakfast table, acting completely normal, like nothing had happened. He even said, "Morning, champ," like he hadn't just slapped me the night before. I couldn't eat. I just sat there, waiting for my mom to notice something was wrong. But she didn't. Later that day, I told her what happened. She went quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Greg would never hit you like that. You must have misunderstood. Maybe he just tapped you to get your attention." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just said, "Mom, I know what happened." She got defensive and said, "You've been stressed lately. Maybe you're overthinking." That's when I realized she wasn't going to believe me. Or maybe she just didn't want to. For the next few days, I avoided being home as much as possible. I stayed late at school, hung out at coffee shops, did anything to keep from running into Greg. He didn't try to talk to me, but I could feel the tension whenever I was in the same room with him. He'd glance at me, cold and distant, like I was some kind of burden in his perfect little household. A few nights later, my mom came into my room and said, "You need to apologize to Greg. I thought I'd misheard her." She said, "He feels like you've been disrespectful. He's trying to create structure, and you keep pushing back." I told her, "He hit me, Mom. You're seriously asking me to apologize?" She crossed her arms and said, "He's trying to help. He's not your enemy." That broke something in me. I realized she wasn't going to protect me. She was going to protect him. After that, I started planning to leave. I don't have a lot of money, but I work part-time at a bookstore, and I've been saving what I can. I talked to a friend from class, Jenna, who said I could crash on her couch for a bit if I needed to. She even offered to help me find a roommate situation near campus. But before I left, I wanted closure. I wanted my mom to know what she was choosing. So one night, when Greg was at work, I sat down with her in the kitchen. I told her calmly that I was moving out. She asked why, and I said, "Because I don't feel safe here." She looked hurt. "You're being dramatic," she said. "You're abandoning your family," I told her. "A family doesn't let someone hit you and then tell you to say sorry for it." She didn't have a response to that. She just looked away. When I left the next morning, she didn't come out to say goodbye. Greg was standing in the living room, watching me load my backpack. He didn't say a word, just smiled a little. Like he'd won something. I walked out without looking back. I've been staying with Jenna for 3 weeks now. It's tight, and I don't have much privacy, but it's safe. I sleep through the night again. I don't jump at every sound. I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells in my own house. Sometimes I still text my mom. She replies. but it's always short. She hasn't mentioned Greg once. I think she knows, deep down, that what happened wasn't okay, but she's not ready to face it. I'm not sure if she ever will. It still messes with my head sometimes, how fast things changed, how one slap over a stupid pair of socks made me see the truth about everything that was already wrong. But I also know I did the right thing. I left before it got worse. I don't know what happens next. But at least now, I get to decide that for myself. It's been a little over 4 months since I left my mom's house. And honestly, the first few weeks were rougher than I expected. I thought once I got out, everything would instantly feel better. But the truth is, even when you escape a bad place, the echoes don't stop right away. At Jenna's apartment, I'd wake up sometimes in the middle of the night thinking I'd heard Greg's voice in the hallway. It took a second for my brain to catch up, to remind myself I was safe. No one was waiting outside my door. No one was going to tell me I was disrespectful for existing a certain way. Jenna's been incredible. She's one of those people who makes you feel like you can breathe again just by being around her. She never pried too much about what happened. But one night I told her everything, the slap, my mom's denial, the guilt. She just sat there listening. And when I finished, she said, "You didn't deserve any of that. You know that, right?" I nodded. But I don't think I fully believed it at the time. Part of me still kept replaying my mom's words, how she'd said I was being dramatic. That word stuck to me like glue. I picked up extra hours at the bookstore and started tutoring a few kids from the community center to save more money. I was exhausted most days, but in a weird way it felt good. It was my exhaustion, my effort, my control. About a month after I moved out, my mom texted me. It was short. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply right away. I stared at that message for hours, trying to figure out what she really wanted. Part of me hoped it meant she believed me now. But when we finally met up at a diner near campus, I realized she hadn't changed as much as I'd hoped. She started with, "I miss you," which made my chest tighten. But then she followed it up with, "Greg feels awful. He wants to apologize, but you have to admit you pushed him too far." I felt my stomach drop. I said, "Mom, he hit me. There's nothing that justifies that." She sighed, rubbing her temples like I was being difficult. "You're holding on to anger. He's trying to move forward. You should too." I couldn't even look at her after that. I just said quietly, "You're choosing him again." And she didn't deny it. That was the moment I realized I couldn't save her from that choice. She was too wrapped up in whatever version of reality made it easier to stay with him. I left some money on the table for my coffee and walked out. She didn't call after me a few days later. I got a message from my cousin Megan. She lives in another state but had heard bits of what happened from a relative. She told me she had a spare room if I ever needed to get out of my current situation or wanted a fresh start. It wasn't something I'd considered before, but the thought stuck in my head. So I started planning again. Not to run this time, but to actually move forward. I applied for a transfer to a university near where Megan lives. It's not guaranteed I'll get in, but the idea of being somewhere new, away from all the old memories, felt like hope then. About a week ago, something unexpected happened. I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, it was Greg's voice. He said, "I just want to say I'm sorry for what happened. I lost my temper. It won't happen again." His tone wasn't apologetic. It was flat, rehearsed, like someone told him he should say it. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. And he went on, "Your mom's been really upset. I think we should all sit down and talk like adults." I told him, "No, you don't get to hit someone and then call them back like it's a misunderstanding." He started to respond, but I hung up before he could finish. My hands were shaking afterward, but I felt something I hadn't felt since I left. Power. Later that night, I told Jenna about it. She said, "That was the right move. You owe him nothing." And she was right. I don't owe him closure, forgiveness, or comfort. This past weekend, I finally packed the last of my stuff from my mom's place. I went when I knew she and Greg would be out. My old room looked smaller than I remembered, emptier. I found a few notes from when I was a kid, drawings my mom had saved in a shoebox. I sat there for a few minutes, thinking about who we used to be before all this. Before Greg, I left the notes on the bed. I couldn't take them with me. It hurt too much to carry that version of us. Now, sitting here in Jenna's apartment, my boxes stacked by the door, I feel lighter, not healed yet, but getting there. Sometimes, when I think about my mom, I still feel this sharp mix of anger and sadness. I miss her, but I also know I can't fix what she refuses to see. I can love her from a distance, even if that distance is the only thing keeping me safe. Next week, I have a meeting with the transfer advisor at the university. If it all works out, I'll be moving by the end of the semester. It's scary, starting over. But it's mine, for the first time. My life feels like it actually belongs to me, and not to someone else's rules or temper. And maybe that's what healing really looks like. Not forgetting, not forgiving too soon, just choosing yourself after years of being told not to. It's been a little over a year now since I left my mom's house for good, and it still amazes me how different life can feel once you're finally out of survival mode. I ended up getting accepted into the university near my cousin Megan's place. I moved there last fall with 2 suitcases, a small box of books, and the few clothes I owned. It wasn't glamorous. My first night there, the air mattress deflated halfway through my sleep, but it was mine. No one yelling down the hallway, no footsteps I had to brace myself for. Just quiet. Megan has been a lifeline. She's in her late 20s, works as a nurse, and has this calm energy that makes everyone around her relax. She didn't ask too many questions about what happened with my mom and Greg. She just said, "You're safe here," and meant it. Classes were overwhelming at first. I hadn't realized how much living in that constant tension had drained me. I couldn't focus. I'd flinch if someone raised their voice, and I always felt like I had to justify taking up space. It took a few months before I started feeling like I actually belonged anywhere. But things slowly got better. I picked up a part-time job at a campus cafe, made a few friends, and joined a small book club that meets every Thursday night. They're the kind of people who talk about everything: grief, bad parents, weird college crushes. And they made me realize how many others have gone through things that look fine on the outside, but break you quietly on the inside. I started therapy too. Megan helped me find someone who specializes in family trauma. The first few sessions were rough. I cried through most of them, which felt embarrassing at first. But my therapist, Dr. Patel, told me, "You spent years being silenced. Crying is your body finally speaking." That stuck with me. There's one moment that really marked the start of my healing. It was sometime in December. I was walking back from class, snow on the ground, and my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. Just one line: "I miss you, can we talk?" I sat on a bench for a while before replying. Part of me still wanted her to say she believed me, that she'd finally seen Greg for who he really was. I wanted her to be the mom she used to be before she got tangled up in his control. So I said yes. We talked a few days later over video call. She looked tired, older than I remembered. Her hair was pulled back, and she kept glancing off screen like she didn't want him to hear her. She started with, "I shouldn't have let things get that far." I didn't breathe for a second. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest she'd ever come. She said, "Greg and I have been having problems. I didn't see what was happening until it got worse." "He's angry all the time," I asked. "Did he hit you?" And she went silent. Then she nodded. That moment hit me hard. I'd spent so long being angry at her for not protecting me, and now she was in the same position I'd been in. She told me she was staying with a friend and didn't know what to do next. I wanted to tell her to leave for good, to run like I did. But I also knew she had to make that choice herself. So I just said, "When you're ready, I'll help you." Since then, we've talked every few weeks. She's in therapy now, too, still shaky, still full of guilt. But she's trying. I don't think we'll ever be the same. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we'll build something new from what's left. As for me, I feel stronger now than I ever have. I'm majoring in social work because I want to help kids and teens who grew up like I did. Quietly walking on eggshells, thinking it's normal. I've built a little community here. Jenna visits sometimes, and she always jokes that I look happier and healthier than any college student has a right to. She's not wrong. I've learned how to cook without feeling like someone's going to criticize me. I hang my laundry wherever I want. I leave socks on the floor sometimes, and every time I do, I smile a little. Because that moment, something as stupid as socks, used to define the fear in my house. And now, it's just part of a normal day. Sometimes I still dream about Greg. Not in a scared way anymore, just in flashes, his voice, that look he gave me right before he hit me. But the difference now is that in those dreams, I always walk away. Every single time, last week, my mom sent me a message that said, "I found an apartment." It was short, but I knew what it meant. She finally left him. I called her. And for the first time in years, her voice sounded light. "Tired but free," she said. "You were right. I should have listened to you sooner," I told her. "It's okay, you're safe now," and I meant it. If you told me 2 years ago that I'd be here, living on my own, in school, healing, helping my mom from a distance, I wouldn't have believed you. Back then, I thought one slap was just a moment of anger I could ignore. Now I know it was the truth. I needed to see everything clearly. It still hurts sometimes. But the pain doesn't own me anymore, I do. And if anyone reading this is stuck in something that feels like love but looks like control, please, listen to that small voice inside you that says, this isn't right, because it's not. You deserve safety, you deserve peace. And one day you'll have both. Stories number 3. My husband always tries to humble me. I never thought I'd be writing something like this. But here I am. I'm 26, my husband Jake is 29, and we've been married for a little over 2 years. We met in college. He was a business major, I was studying communications. Back then, he was charming, confident, and funny. He had this energy that drew people in, and he made me feel special. When we first started dating, I felt like the luckiest girl alive. But over the past year, something has shifted. It's not explosive, not the kind of relationship that makes headlines, but it's slow, subtle, and exhausting. Jake has this habit of trying to humble me every time something good happens in my life. It started small. I got promoted at work last year. I work as a marketing coordinator for a small tech company, and I'd been putting in long hours, late nights, weekends, brainstorming campaigns that actually boosted engagement. When my boss called me in to say I was being promoted to a senior position, I was thrilled. That night I came home excited to tell Jake. He smiled, hugged me, then said, "That's great, babe. Just don't let it get to your head, though. It's not like you're the CEO." I laughed it off. But the comment stung a little. I told myself maybe he was just joking. But it didn't stop there. A few weeks later, one of my coworkers complimented my presentation skills in front of our whole team. When I mentioned it to Jake later, he said, "Yeah, but they probably say that to everyone. Don't take it too seriously." He says things like that all the time. When I dress up, he'll comment, "You look nice. Don't start thinking you're an influencer now." When I post something online and it gets a lot of likes, he'll tease, "Guess you're famous now, huh?" It's always wrapped in humor. But there's an undertone that's hard to ignore. It's not just about me succeeding either. When people compliment us as a couple, say how supportive he seems or how we look good together, he'll find a way to twist it. "Yeah, well, she got lucky," he'll joke, or, "Don't give her too much credit. She still can't cook." He'll say it in front of others and laugh, expecting everyone else to laugh too, and they usually do. I used to think maybe I was too sensitive, but lately, I've realized this pattern has affected the way I see myself. I've started doubting my own accomplishments, almost downplaying things before he can. I catch myself saying things like, "Oh, it's nothing big," or "I just got lucky," because I know if I sound too proud, he'll say something to balance it out. The worst part is, Jake isn't a bad person overall. He's hardworking, funny, and generous with his friends. He can be incredibly sweet when he wants to be. But the moment the spotlight shifts to me, it's like he needs to pull me back down. Last month, things reached a breaking point. My team won an award for a marketing campaign I led. It was a big deal for me. It was featured in an industry newsletter, and my boss even mentioned my name in a company-wide email. I was proud, and I wanted Jake to be proud too. That night, I told him over dinner. He barely looked up from his phone and said, "So? That's your job, right?" I asked him why he couldn't just be happy for me. He rolled his eyes and said, "Because I'm trying to keep you grounded. You already act like you're better than everyone." That one cut deep. I didn't even know what he meant by that. I never brag. I don't rub things in. I just wanted to share something that mattered to me. I told him that made me feel small, and instead of apologizing, he said, "You're too emotional. You can't take a joke." Since then, I've been paying closer attention. I realized he never celebrates me. When his friend buys a new car or gets a promotion, Jake is full of praise. But with me, it's always a joke, a dig, a humble reminder. I started wondering if it's insecurity. Maybe he feels overshadowed. But I've never tried to make him feel that way. A few nights ago, I met up with my friend Sarah for dinner. She's known us for years, and she asked how things were going. I told her everything, and she looked genuinely upset. She said, "That's not normal. That's emotional manipulation. He's tearing you down so you won't realize how amazing you are." Hearing her say it out loud hit me hard. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. I kept replaying all the little comments over the years, all the jokes, all the moments I dimmed my own light to make him feel comfortable. The next morning, I tried to talk to Jake again. I told him I feel like he's constantly undermining me, like he can't let me feel proud of anything. He got defensive immediately. "You're overreacting." "I joke because that's how I show affection," he said. "You've changed. You take everything so seriously now," I said. "Maybe I changed because I got tired of being made to feel small." He didn't have a real response. He just sighed and left for work. We haven't talked much since. Things feel cold and distant. I'm trying to decide if I can fix this or if this is who he really is. I love him. But I don't know if love is enough when someone seems to need you to shrink just so they can feel tall. After that last argument, things between me and Jake went from tense to silent. For the first few days, he barely spoke to me unless it was about groceries, bills, or the dog. It was like living with a stranger. He'd sit on the couch, scrolling through his phone while I cooked dinner. And when I tried to talk, he'd mumble short answers without looking up. At first, I thought he just needed time to cool off. But the silence stretched into a week, then 2. It was almost worse than arguing because it felt like he was punishing me for calling him out. Then one night, out of nowhere, he broke the silence. He came into the kitchen while I was making tea and said, "I don't get why you're so angry all the time. I've always joked like that. You used to laugh." I told him I didn't stop laughing because I changed. I stopped laughing because I started realizing it wasn't funny. I told him again how his constant digs made me feel small and unappreciated. He stared at me for a while, then said, "I just don't want you to become one of those people who think they're better than everyone else," I said. "Jake, that's not humility. That's insecurity. There's a difference." He looked genuinely taken aback by that. I think it was the first time I'd ever called him insecure outright. He tried to brush it off, saying, "I'm not insecure. I'm realistic. You need balance," I said. "Balance doesn't mean tearing someone down every time they're proud of themselves." He didn't respond, just walked away. But that conversation must have rattled him because the next day, he came home with flowers, something he hadn't done in months, he said. "I've been thinking, maybe I do take the jokes too far sometimes." For a moment, I felt hope. He apologized, told me he didn't mean to hurt me, and that he was just trying to keep things light. I told him I appreciated the apology. But what I needed was consistency, not one nice gesture after weeks of silence. Things were slightly better for a few weeks. He started complimenting me more, asking about my day, and even came to my office one afternoon to take me out for lunch. I remember feeling this cautious optimism, like maybe we were turning a corner. But then one night we were out with a group of friends. One of them, Ethan, mentioned how proud he was of his girlfriend finishing her master's degree. Everyone clapped and congratulated her. I made a small joke about being jealous of her dedication. And Jake chimed in, "Yeah, Lily gets jealous of any kind of success that isn't hers." Everyone laughed awkwardly, and my face burned. I tried to laugh it off, but inside, I was furious. The second we got home, I asked him why he said that. He shrugged. "It was a joke, Lily." "You're so sensitive lately," I said. "You embarrassed me. You keep saying it's a joke, but it's always at my expense. It's cruel." He rolled his eyes and said, "You're blowing things out of proportion again. This is why people can't take you seriously anymore." That broke me. I just went upstairs, shut the door, and cried. I didn't want to sleep next to him that night, so I stayed in the guest room. The next morning, he tried to act like nothing happened. He asked if I wanted breakfast, kissed my forehead, and went off to work. I felt sick. The cycle was so obvious now. He'd say something hurtful. I'd react. He'd blame me for being sensitive, then pretend everything was fine. That week, I called Sarah again. She told me she'd been reading about something called negging, and said Jake's behavior sounded exactly like that. When someone subtly insults you to lower your confidence and keep you dependent on their approval. Hearing it described that way made my stomach drop. I decided to go to therapy. I didn't tell Jake at first because I knew he'd make a comment. I found a therapist named Dr. Miller and told her everything. How I felt like I couldn't share anything good without being mocked. How I second-guessed myself constantly. And how exhausted I was from walking on eggshells around someone who was supposed to love me. Dr. Miller said, "It sounds like you've been conditioned to expect criticism from the person who should be your biggest cheerleader. That's not partnership. That's control." That hit hard. After a few sessions, I started setting boundaries. If Jake made a joke that was really an insult, I'd say calmly, "That's not funny." If he tried to play it off, I wouldn't argue. I'd just walk away. I stopped giving his comments oxygen. At first, it threw him off. He'd make a jab, and when I didn't react, He'd repeat it louder, then look confused when I didn't take the bait. Eventually, he asked, "Why are you so quiet lately?" I told him, "Because I'm done explaining why you shouldn't hurt me." He didn't know what to say. Over the next month, something strange happened. Jake started trying harder. He'd actually listen when I talked, ask questions about work, and stop himself mid-sentence sometimes when he was about to make a joke. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I still don't know if it'll last. Part of me hopes he can change, because when he's kind, he's really kind. But another part of me has realized how small I've let myself become in this relationship. Dr. Miller told me that love shouldn't feel like walking through a minefield. It should feel safe. I think about that a lot. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but I've started saving money quietly, just in case. I'm not threatening to leave, but I want to know I can if I need to. For the first time in a long time, that thought doesn't scare me. It feels like strength. It's been about 5 months since that night when I finally told Jake I was done being the butt of his jokes. I didn't realize it then, but that was the night everything really started to unravel. Or maybe it started to heal, depending on how you look at it. For a while after that, things were almost eerily calm. Jake was trying, or at least he was pretending to. He'd compliment me more often, ask about my day, even say things like, "I'm proud of you," without following it up with sarcasm. It felt nice, but it also felt fragile, like I was living in a truce that could break any second. I kept going to therapy every week. I told Dr. Miller I wasn't sure if Jake's change was real or just damage control. She told me something that stuck. Real change doesn't happen because someone gets caught. It happens because they want to grow. A few weeks later, I got a message from my boss that one of my campaigns had been featured in a national business article. It was huge for me. The kind of recognition that could change my career trajectory. I came home, excited, ready to share the news. Jake was in the living room watching TV. I told him what happened and waited for his reaction. He paused, looked at me and said, "Wow, that's really cool, babe." He smiled. For a moment, I believed him. Then, after a beat, he added, "Just don't start thinking you're better than your coworkers, okay?" That was it. The same exact sentence, just wrapped in a softer tone. It was like every session, every conversation, every tear I'd cried had led back to this moment, and I realized he wasn't changing. Not really. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, went upstairs, and closed the door. I sat on the bed and stared at the floor for a long time. I thought about all the times I'd defended him. All the times I'd told myself it wasn't that bad, that everyone has flaws. But what kind of love makes you smaller every time you shine? I packed a small bag that night, just the essentials. I wasn't sure if I was leaving for good, but I knew I needed space. When Jake came to bed, I told him I was going to stay at Sarah's for a few days. He looked confused. "Why?" I said, "Because I don't feel happy here anymore. I don't feel seen." He laughed, not out of humor but disbelief. "You're really doing this over a joke?" I said, "No, Jake, I'm doing this because it's not just a joke, it never was." He didn't try to stop me. He just rolled over and said, "Do whatever you want." That was the last straw. I stayed with Sarah for about a week. She was amazing. She didn't push, didn't lecture, just let me talk when I needed to. The more I said things out loud, the more it clicked. I'd been rationalizing emotional neglect for years. Jake called a few times during that week. His tone shifted from dismissive to desperate. He said things like, "You're overreacting." Then later, "I can change." And finally, "Please come home. I miss you." I told him I needed more than words. I needed him to get help, to talk to someone, to understand why he couldn't celebrate me without feeling threatened. He said he'd think about it. I came back home to grab more of my things 2 weeks later. The house felt different. Quieter, but heavier somehow. There were flowers on the counter and a note that said, "I'm sorry." We sat down and talked for hours that night. He admitted he'd grown up in a house where compliments were rare, where humility was mistaken for self-worth. His dad used to joke with his mom in the same way. and Jake thought that was normal. He said, "I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. I thought teasing was how people showed love." I told him love doesn't have to hurt. It doesn't have to be a competition. He asked if I was coming back home. I told him I didn't know yet. I've been living on my own for 3 months now. Jake has started therapy, and we still talk. But not as husband and wife, just two people trying to understand themselves. I don't know if we'll ever fix what broke between us, but I finally feel like I can breathe again. For the first time in a long time, I feel proud. And I don't need anyone's permission to feel that way. I've learned that love shouldn't make you question your worth. It should remind you of it. And if someone can't celebrate you without needing to cut you down, they don't deserve a front row seat to your growth. Maybe Jake will change someday. Maybe he won't. But I'm no longer waiting for him to decide when I get to feel proud of myself. I've already decided that for me, story's number 4. Yesterday I used an old adage with my 6th graders. Pot calling kettle black. It did not go well. I teach 6th grade English at a middle school in Missouri, and after yesterday, I'm seriously reconsidering how much I rely on old sayings to make a point. What happened started as something small. One of those tiny classroom moments that should have lasted 10 seconds. But somehow spiraled into a misunderstanding that had me sitting in my principal's office at 4 p.m., wondering how the hell a proverb could almost cost me my job. It started during my 3rd period class. It's a lively group, smart kids, but chatty, the kind that turn anything into a side conversation. We were doing a short creative writing exercise about perspective, and I overheard 2 students arguing across the room. One of them, Jackson, accused another student, Kayla, of copying his idea for a story about a talking cat. Kayla immediately shot back, "You literally copied half your essay from ChatGPT last week." The whole class gasped in that dramatic, middle school way, and I instinctively jumped in before it got worse. I said something like, "All right, that's enough. Both of you, Jackson, that's a little like the pot calling the kettle black, don't you think?" There was silence for a moment, then some confused looks. A few kids started giggling. Kayla blinked at me. "Wait. What did you just say?" I repeated it, thinking it would click. It's an old saying, you know, when you criticize someone for something you also do. The pot calling the kettle black. Then one kid in the back, Malik, raised his hand slowly and asked, Ms. Taylor? Did you just say something racist?" At first, I thought he was joking. I kind of half laughed and said, No, it's just an expression. It's about hypocrisy." But the class didn't laugh. They just stared at me like I'd said something awful. Kayla's face had gone serious. "That sounds really racist, Ms. Taylor." I froze. I tried to explain that the saying is old, that it comes from a time when pots and kettles were made of cast iron and would both get black from soot. So calling the kettle black was just ironic. Not racial, but by then it didn't matter. The room's energy had completely changed. Some kids started whispering. Others pulled out their phones. I could feel the tension building, and every explanation I tried only seemed to make it worse. Finally, I just said, "Okay, let's move on," and tried to steer the conversation back to the writing prompt, but the damage was done. By lunch, I'd already been called into the assistant principal's office. Apparently, one of the students had texted their parents during class saying that I used a racist saying. By the time the email reached administration, it had been exaggerated into something like, "Teacher used racial language in front of students." I spent my lunch period sitting in a small office chair, trying to explain to Mr. Jenkins, our assistant principal, what actually happened. He's a decent guy, but he looked exhausted before I even started. I could tell he didn't think I was racist. He's known me for years. But the school district has this zero-tolerance policy for potentially inappropriate language. And once something gets reported, they have to follow up. He asked me to write a statement. I explained exactly what I said, the context and the meaning behind it. He nodded along, saying, "I get it, Taylor, I really do. But you know how things are now. Words can hit differently for different people. We just need to document everything." By the time the last bell rang, I felt completely drained. A few of my students from that class avoided eye contact when they left. 1 or 2 hung back and told me they didn't think I did anything wrong, which helped, but it didn't shake the sick feeling in my stomach. When I got home that night, I sat on the couch scrolling through teacher forums, and I wasn't alone. There were dozens of posts from teachers who had gone through similar things. Harmless idioms, figures of speech, or old cultural phrases that got misinterpreted. One teacher said they got written up for using the term rule of thumb. Another mentioned getting pulled aside for saying spirit animal. It made me realize how much language shifts under our feet without us even noticing. Still, this one hit me harder. I've spent my whole career trying to create a classroom where kids feel respected and understood. I didn't even think twice before using that phrase. It's something my grandmother used to say all the time, but the truth is, these kids are growing up in a completely different cultural context. They hear words differently than we do, and whether or not I intended it that way, what matters is how it landed with them. I can't stop replaying it in my head. The way Malik looked genuinely uncomfortable, how the laughter stopped so abruptly, how the air in the room changed. I keep wondering if I should have taken that moment to apologize, not for saying something racist, but for not realizing how it could sound. Maybe that would have made it easier for everyone. Today, things were calmer, Mr. Jenkins sent an email saying the incident was documented but considered non-issue pending no further concerns. Basically, I'm not in trouble, but it's in my file still. When I walked into third period again, I could feel that something had shifted. The trust wasn't quite there. The kids weren't angry or anything. But there was a stiffness that wasn't there before. I tried to start the class off lighthearted, and when Malik walked in, I greeted him with a smile and said, "Hey Malik, ready for your story?" He smiled back, but it was a cautious smile. That's when it really hit me how fragile the classroom environment is now. You can lose credibility in one misunderstood sentence, even if your intentions are pure. After school, I sat in my car and thought about my grandmother. How she used to say that same phrase whenever I called someone out for doing something she'd done herself. Pot calling kettle black, she'd laugh. Back then it was just words. No baggage, no fear. But now, I guess I have to accept that my students live in a world where words carry new meanings. And old idioms don't always translate the way we think they do. I'll adapt. I have to. That's part of being a teacher. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't shaken by how fast something innocent can turn into a crisis. I don't know. Maybe it's a sign of progress that kids are more aware of language. Maybe it's just growing pains between generations. Either way, I'm learning that being a teacher now means walking a linguistic tightrope every single day. And next time I want to use an old saying in class, I think I'll just stop myself. Because even if I don't mean anything by it, it only takes one moment for everything to change. Update. 2 weeks later. It's been a couple of weeks since the proverb incident, as I half-jokingly call it now. Though there's still nothing funny about it when I think too hard. I wasn't planning to post again, but a lot has happened since then, and honestly, I just need to get it out somewhere where people might actually understand what this feels like. For the first few days after it all went down, I tried to just move on, pretend it was over, smile in the hallways, keep teaching. But kids have long memories, and even longer reach when it comes to social media. On the Thursday after the incident, one of my coworkers, Mr. Hill, he teaches social studies, stopped me in the break room. He looked uncomfortable and said, "Hey Taylor, have you seen the TikTok?" I blinked. "What TikTok?" He hesitated, then handed me his phone. There it was. A 15-second clip, apparently filmed by someone in my third period class. Right after I said the phrase, you couldn't hear it clearly, but you could hear a kid repeating it. She said the pot calling the kettle black, followed by someone else whispering, "That's racist!" The caption read, "When your teacher says some questionable stuff, middle school WTF." It had a few thousand views already. A few comments too, most from other students in the district, speculating about what teacher it was. Someone had even commented, "Oh, that's Ms. Taylor at Lincoln Middle," which made my stomach drop. I felt sick. I asked Hill to delete it, and he said he didn't know who posted it. I reported it immediately, but you know how the internet works. Once something's up, it's already everywhere. I went home that night and just cried. Not because I was scared of losing my job, though that thought crossed my mind, but because I felt so misunderstood. It was surreal knowing my entire reputation could be shaped by a 5-second soundbite taken out of context by a bunch of 12-year-olds. The next morning, I told Mr. Jenkins about the video. He'd already seen it. A parent had emailed it to him the night before. He sighed, said the district's communications office was handling it, and reassured me that I wasn't in trouble, but that the situation required sensitivity. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly at that. Sensitivity has become code for don't mess up again. That afternoon, my principal, Mrs. Grant, asked me to attend a meeting with the school board's diversity liaison, Miss Ramirez. She's kind, sharp, and genuinely cares about equity. But sitting there explaining myself again made me feel like I was shrinking. I explained the phrase, the context, and that I hadn't even known it could be perceived as racial. Ms. Ramirez was understanding but firm. She said, "Taylor, I believe you, but you have to remember, intent doesn't erase impact. Your students heard a word that, historically, has racial undertones, and they reacted to that." I nodded. I understood her point, even if it stung. I left the meeting feeling a mix of shame and frustration. The following Monday, the school decided to do a language and context week, an initiative, supposedly inspired by what happened, to teach students about cultural awareness, language history, and the evolution of words. It was a smart idea in theory, but in practice, it felt like a public relations patch job. In the staff meeting where they introduced it, Mrs. Grant said something like, "We can use this as a learning moment for everyone." The phrase learning moment made my skin crawl. I felt like I'd been turned into a cautionary tale. That week, my class discussions were tense. Some students were curious, genuinely interested in where old sayings came from, but others kept giving me side eyes, waiting for me to slip up. One even asked, "So, Ms. Taylor, are you going to teach us more racist stuff today?" It was said half-jokingly, but the comment hit me like a slap. I paused the lesson and said, quietly but clearly, "You know, that really hurts. I didn't mean to offend anyone, and I've been trying to make it right, but it's not fair to keep bringing it up like a joke." The class went silent for once. I think they realized I wasn't just the adult who messed up. I was a person with feelings too. A few days later, something surprising happened. Malik, the same student who'd first asked if what I said was racist, stayed after class. He shuffled his feet awkwardly and said, "I told my mom about it. She said it's not racist. It's just an old saying. I didn't know." I smiled and said, "Thank you for telling me that, Malik. That means a lot." Then he shrugged and said, "I think it's good we talked about it, though." Some people didn't know where it came from, and that, weirdly enough, was the first time I felt like maybe this whole thing could end with something good. By the end of that week, the TikTok had lost traction. A few more people commented, but the attention faded. The school board moved on to worrying about test scores and attendance again. Life at Lincoln Middle returned to its usual chaotic rhythm of hallway noise, spilled milk, and preteen drama, but I haven't been the same since. Now, every time I speak in class, I think twice before using any expression that isn't 100% literal. I've even caught myself editing my jokes mid-sentence. I don't want to become one of those burned-out teachers who stop connecting with their students out of fear. But I get it now. How easily that happens. Jason, my husband, told me last night that I'm overthinking it. He said, "Kids are just sensitive. Don't let it get to you." But that's the thing. It has gotten to me. Because I'm not just scared of losing my job. I'm scared of losing my ability to connect. Teaching used to be my safe place. Now, every word feels like walking on eggshells. I'm still trying to find the balance between being careful and being myself. I know language evolves, and I respect that. But I also wish there were more grace for people like me. Teachers trying to do the right thing in a world that changes faster than we can keep up. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that sometimes even the smallest words can carry the heaviest weight. And when you speak for a living, that weight never really goes away. Final update. 3 months later. It's been a full 3 months since the proverb incident. And honestly, if you told me back in August that something so small, a single idiom, would shape my entire semester, I would have laughed. Now I'm not laughing. I'm still teaching, but everything feels different. Not in a catastrophic way, but in that quiet, irreversible way that changes how you move through the world. After my last post, things calmed down for a while. The TikTok disappeared into the abyss of the internet. The admins stopped checking in every other day, and the kids found new drama to fixate on for the first time in weeks. I could teach without feeling like every eye in the room was waiting for me to say something wrong. But the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like aftermath. In early September, I was asked to attend a district-wide professional development seminar on cultural literacy in education. The email said it was optional, but it wasn't. Every teacher who'd had a language incident in the last 2 years was strongly encouraged to attend. I recognized a few faces when I walked in. Other teachers from nearby schools who looked as tired and defensive as I probably did. The presenter, a woman named Dr. Lawson, was sharp, articulate, and passionate about what she did. She talked about microaggressions, coded language, and how old sayings can unintentionally carry historical weight. She wasn't patronizing. In fact, she made a point to say that intent matters, but impact matters more. At one point, she said something that stuck with me. Teachers are the storytellers of culture. Every phrase you use, every joke you make, kids pick up on it. They're learning from you, even when you're not teaching the lesson. That line replayed in my head for days. After the session, I stayed behind and spoke with her privately. I told her about what had happened with my students. The TikTok, the meetings, everything. She listened quietly, then said, "You weren't wrong to use the phrase. You were just caught in a moment where understanding lagged behind reaction, but you handled it with grace. That's what matters." It was the first time anyone had said something kind about how I'd handled it. It meant more than I expected. A week later, something else happened that changed how I saw the whole ordeal. During our school's open house night, Malik's mom came up to me. I recognized her immediately. She looked just like him. Same confident eyes. I braced myself, half expecting her to bring up the controversy again. But instead she smiled warmly and said, "You're Ms. Taylor, right?" Malik told me what happened. I just wanted to say thank you. I blinked, surprised. "Thank you? For what? For not making him feel stupid?" she said. "You could have brushed it off or punished him, but you took the time to explain. That matters. He's been talking about how words have history now. You got him thinking." I almost teared up right there in the hallway. That single conversation washed away weeks of tension I'd been carrying. Later that night, as I sat in my car in the parking lot, I realized something. The whole situation, as messy and unfair as it felt, had actually made me a better teacher. Not because I learned to watch what I say, but because I learned how deeply kids listen when they care. Since then, I've leaned into that. I've started incorporating small discussions about language origin into our weekly lessons. We pick a word or phrase, kill two birds with one stone, bury the hatchet, break the ice, and research where it came from. The kids love it. It's turned into this quirky Friday routine called Word Origins with M's. Taylor, last week, Malik raised his hand and said, "Can we talk about slang next? Like where it comes from?" And just like that, the student who once accused me of being insensitive was now leading a discussion on cultural language. I couldn't make that up if I tried. Of course, not everything's been rosy. There are still moments when I hesitate before I speak. Moments where I can feel the fear creeping back in. But I remind myself that silence isn't safety. It's just distance. And I didn't become a teacher to stay distant. Even Jason, my husband, has noticed a change. The other night he said, "You seem lighter, like you're finally done punishing yourself." He's right. I've stopped replaying the incident in my head. I've accepted that sometimes you can do everything right. Explain, apologize, educate, and still get misunderstood. That's life. That's teaching. The district even asked me last week if I'd be willing to co-lead a workshop for new teachers on classroom communication and context. At first, I laughed. Me, the woman who accidentally became the cautionary tale, but then I thought about it and I said yes. Because if my awkward, painful, viral moment can help even one new teacher avoid the same fallout, it'll be worth it. So yeah, that's where I am now. The phrase that once made me question my entire career has somehow led me to grow in it. Sometimes, when I think about that day, I still cringe a little, but then I remember something Dr. Lawson said in that seminar. Education isn't about never making mistakes. It's about what you do with them once you've made them. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I did something right. Stories number 5. My sister demanded my wedding dress. After her engagement, now my whole family says I'm selfish. When I got married 3 years ago, I wore the most beautiful wedding dress I'd ever seen. It wasn't designer, but it might as well have been, at least to me. It was classic ivory satin with a fitted waist, delicate lace sleeves, and a soft train that caught the light in this almost ethereal way. The dress cost me $2,400, which was a small fortune for me back then. I'd been working 2 jobs while planning the wedding, and every dollar I saved went into that dress. I didn't buy it because I wanted to flaunt it. I bought it because it made me feel beautiful in a way I'd never felt before. 3 years later, I'm 29 now and happily married to my husband, Nathan. We live in a small house outside of Chicago with our golden retriever. Murphy. Life has been good, not glamorous, but full and happy. My younger sister, Haley, 27, just got engaged 2 months ago to her fiancé, Brandon. We've always had a somewhat complicated relationship. She's the kind of person who loves attention, who thrives in the spotlight, while I've always been the quieter, keep the peace type. When Haley got engaged, the family group chat basically exploded. Everyone was congratulating her, talking about wedding plans, asking for dates and themes. I was genuinely happy for her. I really was. But I also knew how she gets. Haley has this way of turning everything into a competition. She compared grades, jobs, even relationships growing up. So I had this sinking feeling that her wedding planning would somehow drag me into something. I just didn't expect it to be this. About 2 weeks after her engagement, she called me. Her tone was syrupy sweet, the kind of tone she uses when she's about to ask for something big. We made small talk for a bit, and then she said, "So I've been thinking, you still have your wedding dress, right?" I told her I did. It was cleaned and stored in a preservation box in my closet. She paused for a beat and then said, "Well, I was wondering if I could borrow it for my wedding." I hesitated. "Borrow it?" I asked carefully. "Yeah," she said, sounding excited. "It's so perfect. And we kind of have the same build. I remember how stunning you looked, and it would mean so much if I could wear it. Plus, it would save me a ton of money. You know how expensive dresses are." I didn't know how to respond. It caught me completely off guard. I told her I'd think about it, which immediately seemed to upset her. She got defensive, saying, "It's just a dress, Taylor. It's been sitting in a box for 3 years. It's not like you're ever gonna wear it again." That's when something in me shifted. Because yes, it's just a dress, but it's also my dress. It's the one thing from my wedding day that I've kept exactly as it was. It's sentimental, not practical. It's not about the money or the fact that it's in storage. It's about what it represents. So I told her, "Haley, I love you, but I don't feel comfortable lending out my dress. It's really special to me." Her tone changed instantly. She went from pleading to angry. "You're being selfish," she snapped. "You know I can't afford a dress like that right now. You already had your wedding. Why can't you let me have something nice too?" I tried explaining that it wasn't about denying her something nice, but she wouldn't hear it. She ended the call with, "Wow, I hope you enjoy hoarding your stupid dress," and hung up. A few hours later, my mom called me. She said Haley was crying and felt betrayed. Mom tried to stay neutral at first, but quickly started guilt-tripping me. She said, "Honey, you know your sister's been struggling with money since she lost that job. You could really help her out by letting her wear it. Think of it as passing down a family heirloom." That phrase, family heirloom, made me want to laugh and scream at the same time. It's not an heirloom, it's mine. I bought it. No one helped me pay for it. I told my mom that if Haley was struggling, I'd happily help her look for affordable dresses or even help pay for a new one. Apparently, that wasn't good enough. Within 2 days, my phone was blowing up with texts from family members. My aunt, a cousin, even my grandma, all saying I should just be the bigger person and let Haley borrow the dress. One of them even wrote, "It's not like you can take it to your grave." The only person on my side was Nathan. He was furious on my behalf. He said, "That dress is yours. You paid for it, you wore it, you get to decide what happens to it." End of story. I thought that was the end of it. But oh no, Haley wasn't done. Last weekend, my mom invited me over for brunch. When I got there, Haley was there too. The second I saw her smirk, I knew something was off. After we ate, Mom asked me to help bring something up from the basement. When I came back into the living room, Haley was sitting there with my wedding dress box open on the table. I froze. Apparently, my mom had told Haley where I kept it and given her the spare key I left at their house, just in case. She'd gone into my place earlier that morning and taken it. I lost it. I don't even remember everything I said. But it wasn't polite. I grabbed the box and left, shaking. Haley yelled after me that I was ruining her wedding, and that she shouldn't have to buy her own dress when her sister already has the perfect one. That night, I changed the locks. Since then, half my family isn't speaking to me. My mom says I overreacted and that Haley didn't mean any harm. Haley's been posting passive-aggressive things on social media like, "Some people only care about themselves." Guess that's what family means to them. It's exhausting. I'm angry, but also hurt that my family can't see how violated I feel. That dress isn't just fabric, it's memories. It's the one thing from that day that still feels like mine. And yes, maybe it's sitting in a closet, but so what? I don't owe anyone the right to use it, not even my sister. Especially not after she literally broke into my house to get it. The irony is, if she had just accepted my no gracefully, I probably would have found a way to help her buy her own dream dress. But now, I can't even look at her. Nathan told me to stop explaining myself to people who've already decided to misunderstand me. He's right, but it still hurts that the people who watched me grow up, who should understand the meaning of that dress to me, are calling me selfish over a piece of fabric that symbolizes one of the happiest days of my life. I don't know what's worse. The fact that my sister tried to steal something so personal, or that my family is pretending it's not a big deal. All I know is this: that dress is staying in its box, in my house with new locks, because some boundaries should never have to be explained. Update: 6 months later. It's been half a year since the whole wedding dress disaster blew up. And honestly, I thought time would make it easier to laugh about. It hasn't. It's been messy, weird, and at times, painfully awkward. The kind of family drama that lingers like smoke after a fire. After my last post, I decided to go completely no contact with Haley for a while. I muted her on social media, stopped answering her texts, and told my mom that I didn't want to talk about the situation anymore. For a while, that silence actually gave me some peace. But of course, it couldn't last. Not when a wedding was coming up. Haley's wedding was scheduled for late May. I didn't go. That wasn't an easy decision. But I couldn't stomach the idea of smiling through pictures with a sister who had broken into my house, taken something deeply personal, and never apologized. I thought my absence would be a quiet statement. Instead, it became the latest scandal in the family group chat. A week before the wedding, my mom called again. And this time, she wasn't gentle about it. "Taylor, you're her only sister," she said. "You'll regret not being there. She's extending an olive branch by inviting you." "An olive branch?" I said. "She hasn't said one word to me since she tried to steal my dress." Mom sighed like I was being dramatic. "She made a mistake. We all make mistakes. Be the bigger person." I told her that being the bigger person doesn't mean being a doormat, and hung up. Then, 2 nights later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of Haley in a wedding dress. Not my wedding dress, thankfully, but an eerily similar one. The caption underneath read, "See? Got my dream dress after all." No, thank you. No, I understand. Not even an olive branch like my mom had claimed. Just a passive-aggressive jab wrapped in lace and smugness. I stared at that photo for a long time. It should have made me angry, but it mostly made me sad. Sad because my sister was still stuck in that petty, competitive mindset where she needed to win, even if it meant burning bridges. The wedding came and went without me. My mom sent me a photo afterward of the family. Everyone smiling, looking picture perfect. I noticed my name wasn't even mentioned in any of the captions Haley posted. It was like I didn't exist, Nathan told me. "You did the right thing. You protected yourself." I knew he was right, but it still stung seeing my own family carry on like I was the villain for setting boundaries. A few weeks later, the situation somehow managed to get even stranger. I got a call from my Aunt Linda. She's the blunt, no-filter one in the family. The only person who didn't fully take Haley's side. She said, "I'm not trying to start drama, but you should know Haley's telling people you offered her the dress and then took it back out of jealousy." I laughed out loud when she said it. That bitter kind of laugh where you're too tired to even be mad. Apparently, Haley had rewritten the story to make herself the victim. In her version, I had promised the dress, then changed my mind because I couldn't stand her getting attention. That was the final straw for me. I called Haley. She didn't answer at first, but a few hours later, she sent me a message that said, "If this is about the wedding, let's just move on." "It's over," I replied. "No. This is about you lying about me to people who weren't even there." That started a full-blown text war. I won't bore you with every message, but the gist of it was her accusing me of hoarding sentimental things, and me pointing out that breaking into someone's home isn't a misunderstanding. It's crossing a line. At one point she wrote, "You've always thought you were better than me. That's why you won't share anything. Not your dress, not your happiness, nothing." That line made me realize something. She didn't want the dress. She wanted the feeling it gave me. She wanted to stand in it and somehow absorb what she thought I had. Stability, love, contentment. It wasn't about fabric or money. It was about envy disguised as need. After that conversation, I told her not to contact me again unless it was to apologize. She hasn't, but strangely enough, not everything that came out of this was negative. My relationship with my mom, though strained at first, has started to heal. A month ago, She came over with a box of old family photos. She looked exhausted, like the whole situation had finally worn her down. We sat at my kitchen table for hours, just flipping through pictures of birthdays and graduations. At one point she said, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have given her your spare key. I thought I was helping. But I see now I made things worse." I didn't say anything at first because I didn't trust myself not to cry. But then she added, "You were right to protect what's yours. I just didn't want to see my girls divided." That's when I realized my mom wasn't malicious. She just wanted peace, even if it came at my expense. But peace built on guilt isn't real peace. Since then, she's been slowly setting her own boundaries with Haley too. Apparently, after the wedding, Haley asked her for money to redo some of the photos because she wasn't happy with how they turned out. My mom told her no, which for her was a big step. As for the dress, it's still in my closet, still sealed in its preservation box. I did take it out once recently, not for any sentimental reason, just curiosity. The lace is still soft, the satin's still perfect. It still makes me tear up when I think about that day, but now, it also represents something new. The first time I really stood up for myself against my family's expectations. Nathan joked that we should frame a picture of it with a plaque that says, "The dress that started a war." He's half right. But it's also the dress that taught me the difference between kindness and compliance. I used to think keeping the peace meant always giving in, always being the accommodating sister, the understanding daughter. But now I see that peace isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about knowing when to stop apologizing for having boundaries. And if that makes me selfish, then fine. I'll wear that title like a badge. Or better yet, like a wedding dress that's truly mine. Final update. 1 year later. It's officially been a year since Haley's wedding. And it still amazes me how one dress managed to change the entire dynamic of our family. You'd think something that dramatic would fade over time, that we'd eventually patch things up and laugh about it someday. But that hasn't really happened, if anything. The situation evolved in ways I couldn't have imagined. After that last big fallout, Haley and I didn't talk for months. Complete silence, no texts, no calls. Not even a passive-aggressive Merry Christmas message. And honestly, it was peaceful. My mental health had improved so much. I didn't realize how much emotional weight I was carrying from constantly trying to keep the peace. But the silence didn't last forever, because life, as always, finds a way to get messy again. Around February, I got a call from my mom. She sounded excited. The kind of excited that made me brace myself. "Taylor, I have big news," she said. Almost breathless, I already knew before she said it. "Haley's pregnant, isn't she?" She gasped. "How did you know?" Mother's intuition. Maybe. Or maybe it was just the way my mom said big news, in that I want us all to be a happy family again tone. She went on about how Haley and her husband, Derek, were expecting their first child, a girl, and how Haley wanted to start fresh. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think that maybe motherhood had softened her, made her realize life's too short for grudges. But another part of me remembered how starting fresh usually meant me forgiving her while she pretended nothing happened. Still, I told my mom, if she reaches out, I'll listen. It took another month before Haley actually did. She sent a short message. "Hey, I know things were bad between us. I'd like to talk." I stared at it for a long time before replying with a simple, "Okay." We met at a small cafe downtown, neutral territory. When I saw her walk in, I barely recognized her. She looked different. Softer, maybe. Tired in that way only someone who's been doing a lot of soul-searching looks. The conversation started awkwardly. She talked about the pregnancy, her job, Derek's promotion, all safe topics. Then she went quiet for a long moment before blurting out, "I'm sorry for the dress, for breaking into your house, for lying about you. I know you don't owe me anything, but I need you to know I was wrong." I didn't expect that. I think I just sat there in stunned silence for a few seconds. She started crying, not the performative kind. Real tears, shaky hands, everything. She said she'd been in therapy since December, that her therapist helped her unpack a lot of jealousy and resentment she'd carried toward me since childhood. Apparently, she'd always felt like I was the one who had it together, while she was the one who needed rescuing. And when I stopped rescuing her, it broke something in her, I won't lie. Hearing that hit me hard. I told her I forgave her, but forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. She nodded, saying she understood completely. We ended that meeting with a hug, a real one, not the stiff, for mom's sake kind. I didn't realize how much I'd missed my sister until that moment. But I also didn't let myself dive back in too fast. Rebuilding trust takes time. Over the next few months, we started texting again, sharing little updates. She'd send me ultrasound pictures and I'd congratulate her. She even asked if I'd consider being in the delivery room when the baby was born. I politely declined, but I promised I'd visit afterward. When her daughter Emma was born in late July, I sent flowers and a handwritten note. A week later she called me sobbing. "Taylor, I can't believe you wrote me that. It means more than you know." The note had been simple. I'd written, "You're going to be a wonderful mom. I'm proud of the woman you're becoming." Since then, things have been cautiously good. She's different, calmer, grounded. She told me she's been going to therapy weekly and even apologized to our mom for dragging her into everything. Speaking of mom, her relationship with both of us has improved. Too, for the first time in years, she's not playing referee. I think she realized that trying to keep peace at any cost was doing more harm than good. Now she's learned to let her daughters handle their own conflicts. A few weeks ago, Haley and Derek hosted a small family BBQ to celebrate Emma's 2-month milestone. I decided to go. It was my first time seeing Haley's house since all the drama. And walking up that driveway, I'll admit, my stomach was in knots. But when I saw Haley standing there with the baby in her arms, smiling at me, it felt like a piece of the past finally settled. The day went better than I could have hoped. There were a few awkward moments, sure, like when one of Haley's friends jokingly asked, "So, which sister is the one with the famous wedding dress?" And everyone laughed a little too nervously. But it didn't derail anything. Later that night, after everyone had left, Haley pulled me aside and handed me a small gift box. Inside was a tiny baby dress, made from scraps of lace she'd saved from her wedding gown. There was a note that read, "Something old, something new. I want Emma to grow up knowing that family isn't about what we take. It's about what we make right," I cried. Like ugly cried. That moment felt like the full circle closure I didn't even realize I needed. We're not magically perfect sisters now. There are still things we'll probably never agree on. But there's love again. Real love. Not the strained version that came with resentment and guilt. As for my own wedding dress, it's still preserved in that same box. I've thought about what I'll do with it someday. Maybe I'll pass it down to my own daughter, if I have one. Or maybe, one day, I'll give it to Emma, if she ever wants it, as a symbol of how far her mom and I came. Because at the end of the day, it's not just a dress anymore. It's a reminder that forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone hurt you again. It means understanding why it happened and choosing to grow anyway. This past year taught me that boundaries and love can coexist. That you can forgive someone without erasing the lessons their mistakes taught you. And honestly, that feels like the most beautiful ending I could have asked for. Stories number 6. When my ex's new wife demanded my son thank her first, I finally snapped. I'm a 36-year-old single mom to a 10-year-old boy named Ethan. His dad, my ex-husband Mark, and I divorced 6 years ago. It wasn't a messy divorce by Hollywood standards, but it wasn't clean either. We fought a lot in the early days, mostly about custody, child support, and his new relationship with his now wife, Jessica. She entered the picture fast, like within months of our separation. I tried to keep things cordial for Ethan's sake, but Jessica made it hard. Jessica is 33, and to be fair, she's not some evil stepmom stereotype, but she has this obsessive need to be seen as important. Every school event, every holiday, she finds a way to make herself front and center. She calls Ethan our son, which makes my skin crawl. Not because I'm possessive, but because she's only been around for a handful of years and acts like she's been raising him since birth. Anyway, here's where things blew up. Ethan had a big weekend planned with Mark and Jessica, a camping trip to Colorado with Mark's side of the family. Ethan was really excited. He packed his little duffel bag 3 days in advance, made a checklist, even brought his favorite marshmallows. I was happy for him, genuinely. He deserves good memories with both parents. Mark texted me updates over the weekend, mostly pictures of Ethan roasting marshmallows or sitting on his uncle's shoulders fishing. Everything seemed fine. But when they came back on Sunday evening, I could tell something was off the minute I saw Ethan. He was quiet, usually after these trips. He's buzzing with stories, telling me about every bug bite and campfire story. But this time nothing, I asked. "Hey bud, everything okay?" He just shrugged. "Yeah, I'm tired." Jessica came up to the door with Mark and did that tight smile she always does. "Hi, Leah," she said in her overly sweet tone. "Ethan had a wonderful time." You should really thank Mark and me for putting it together. I nodded politely. Of course, thanks for taking him, she smiled, clearly waiting for something else. When Ethan didn't immediately say anything, she turned to him and said, Ethan, aren't you forgetting something? He blinked up at her, clearly confused. Thanks? She frowned. No, sweetie, that's not how we practiced it. You're supposed to say, thank you, Jessica, for planning the trip. The way she said it, slow, expectant, rubbed me so wrong. It felt less like gratitude and more like a performance. Ethan glanced at me, unsure. I could see his little shoulders tense up. I said, it's fine, Jess. He said thank you, but she wasn't done. No, it's important he learns proper manners. We spent a lot of time organizing this trip for him. Mark stayed silent. Of course he did. That man could watch a house burn down and still say, let's not make this a big deal, I finally said, trying to keep calm. He's been traveling for hours. Jessica, he's tired. He said thank you. Let's leave it at that. Jessica's smile tightened, her voice sugary but sharp. Leah, I'm just trying to teach him gratitude. You don't have to make it a power struggle. I swear I could feel my jaw lock. Power struggle? You came to my door to make my son recite lines for you like it's a play? You think that's gratitude? Ethan looked between us, terrified. I didn't want him witnessing another adult argument, so I said, Ethan, go inside, honey, take your bag upstairs. He bolted like his sneakers were on fire. Once he was gone, I turned to Mark. You're really okay with this? He sighed. Leah, come on, Jess just wants to make sure he's polite. Polite? I laughed, completely done. She wants to be worshipped. Jessica gasped like I'd slapped her. Excuse me? I've done nothing but love your son. I looked her dead in the eye. Then act like it. Love doesn't demand recognition every 5 minutes. Mark mumbled something about everyone being tired, and basically herded Jessica toward their car. Before she got in, she turned back and said, this attitude is exactly why Ethan gets confused about who's in charge. That line, who's in charge, I almost lost it. I shut the door before I said something I'd regret. Ethan was upstairs, curled up on his bed. I sat beside him and asked gently, hey, what happened? He hesitated. Jessica made me do this thing all weekend where I had to thank her every time she gave me something or planned something. She said I needed to show appreciation so she knew I cared. But I did. I said thank you a bunch of times. He looked so small and defeated when he said that. I told him, you did nothing wrong. You don't owe anyone rehearsed gratitude. You just be polite and kind, okay? He nodded, then whispered, I don't like it when she gets mad at me for not saying things the right way. That hit me right in the chest. I emailed Mark the next day. I said I didn't appreciate Jessica making Ethan feel uncomfortable or forcing emotional performances out of him. I told him that if it happened again, I'd be reevaluating how visits go. He replied with his usual, you're overreacting spiel. But here's the kicker. Jessica then texted me. She wrote, you're setting a bad example for Ethan by not encouraging gratitude. He'll grow up entitled. I didn't respond. I just blocked her. A few days later, Ethan came home from school and said Jessica told him I don't understand how to co-parent. That's when I lost it. I called Mark, told him in no uncertain terms that this stops now. If Jessica couldn't respect my boundaries, she could stay out of drop-offs and pickups entirely. He reluctantly agreed, though I could tell he was annoyed. For the next few weeks, things calmed down. Jessica didn't come to drop-offs. Mark did. Ethan seemed happier, more relaxed. But here's where I started to question myself a bit. My mom, who's usually team me all the way, said maybe Jessica was just trying to get Ethan to be respectful. It wouldn't have killed him to thank her properly. I told her she didn't see how Jessica acted. It wasn't about manners, Mom. It was about control. She frowned but didn't push it. Now it's been about a month since all that, and I still don't regret standing my ground. Ethan's calmer. He doesn't flinch when his dad calls anymore. I think he feels safe knowing I'll defend him, but sometimes, in those quiet moments when I'm folding his laundry or helping with homework, I catch myself wondering if I'm too protective. If maybe I am making things tense between the houses. Then I remember the look on his face that night. Small, scared, trying to figure out who he was supposed to please. And I know I did the right thing, because my job isn't to make Jessica feel appreciated. My job is to make sure my son feels loved. Update. 3 months later, I didn't think this whole thank Jessica first situation would spiral into something bigger. But of course it did. When people show you who they are, you should believe them. And Jessica? She made sure I couldn't ignore it anymore. After I blocked her number, things went quiet for a while. Drop-offs were smoother because Mark handled them alone, and Ethan seemed lighter. We'd settled into a peaceful routine. I thought maybe, finally, we'd found some balance. Then came Ethan's parent-teacher conference in late February. When I got to the classroom, I noticed something strange right away. 2 extra chairs at the table. I assumed it was for me and Mark. But then Jessica walked in behind him, all smiles, wearing this pastel pink blazer like she was interviewing for a position at Ethan's school. I tried to keep my cool. "Oh, you're here," I said. She gave me that syrupy grin. Of course. I help Mark with a lot of Ethan's schoolwork, so it just makes sense I'm part of the conversation. Part of me wanted to laugh. She helped him with one spelling worksheet last month, after she made him rewrite it 3 times because his handwriting was sloppy. Ethan's teacher, Mrs. Carter, looked caught off guard. She glanced at me, clearly unsure who was who. I could tell she was trying to navigate the awkwardness, so I just said, "I'm Ethan's mom. This is his dad, Mark." Then I paused, deliberately. "And this is Mark's wife." Jessica's smile twitched. "Just a little. The meeting started fine, Mrs. Carter said Ethan was doing well. Smart, curious, always willing to help others. She said he'd been struggling a bit with confidence during group work, though, and that he seemed hesitant to speak up when he had the right answers. That broke my heart. He used to be fearless." Then Jessica piped up, "We've been working on that at our house. I tell him to be more assertive and confident. He just needs to learn to take feedback." Mrs. Carter smiled politely, but I saw her eyes flick toward me. Like she knew what was going on, I calmly said, "I think Ethan's confidence issues have more to do with anxiety about disappointing adults." "He tries very hard to be good," Jessica interrupted. "Well, that's what discipline is about, isn't it? Teaching them to meet expectations." I swear the temperature in that room dropped 10 degrees. I just looked at her and said, "He's 10, Jessica. Not an employee." Mark cleared his throat, mumbling something about not arguing. Mrs. Carter quickly moved the meeting along. After it ended, Jessica tried to linger, talking to the teacher about volunteering at the spring fair. I just walked out. I didn't owe her a scene, and I wasn't going to give her one. But later that week, Ethan came home with something that made my stomach drop. It was a gratitude chart. He said Jessica made him fill it out at their house. Each box had prompts like, "Who did something nice for you today? Did you thank them properly? How can you show more gratitude tomorrow?" At first glance, it looked harmless, but then I saw the pattern. Every box that mentioned her, Jessica, had been checked, circled and covered in gold star stickers. The ones that mentioned anyone else, me, his teacher, his friends, had nothing. I asked, "Did Jessica tell you what to write?" He looked down. "She said it's important to practice gratitude for the people who take care of you most. She said sometimes people forget who really helps them." That was it. I'd had enough. I called Mark that night and told him I needed to talk to him in person. He came by after work, looking exhausted, like he already knew what was coming. I showed him the chart. He sighed. "Leah, it's just a kid thing. She means well, I said, keeping my voice steady but low. "She's manipulating him, Mark. This isn't about teaching gratitude. It's about making sure Ethan sees her as the good parent." He rubbed his forehead. "You're reading too much into it. That line, again, always that line." "Then explain why my son comes home anxious about who he's supposed to thank first," I said. "Why he's afraid to get it wrong? You think that's normal?" Mark didn't have an answer. He just said, "I'll talk to her." A few days later, I got an email, not from Jessica this time, but from Mark's lawyer. It was about communication boundaries and co-parenting expectations. It basically said that since Jessica is a parental figure, she has the right to participate in matters relating to Ethan's welfare. I called Mark, furious. "You actually lawyered up over this?" He said, "It's not like that. Jessica just wants things clearly defined." I laughed, bitterly. "Clearly defined? She's trying to write herself into my child's life like I'm an afterthought." After that, I got my own lawyer. I'd never wanted to go down that road again. But if Jessica wanted things official, fine, we'd make it official. My attorney, Carla, helped me file a motion to reinforce that I have primary legal custody, and that all communication regarding Ethan goes directly between me and Mark. No third parties, no exceptions. When Mark was served, he called me, angry. "You didn't have to go this far." "Yes, I did," I said. "Because you wouldn't stop her." The hearing was short. The judge sided with me, reminding both parties that unless Mark formally adopts Ethan, which will never happen, Jessica has no parental authority. She's his stepmother, not his co-parent. You'd think that would be the end of it, but people like Jessica don't know how to quit quietly. A few weekends later, Ethan came home saying Jessica cried because she felt unappreciated after he forgot to hug her goodbye. He said she told him, "Some people don't realize how hard I try." He was upset about it for hours. Asking me if he'd done something wrong, I told him, "You are not responsible for an adult's feelings. You say thank you when you mean it. That's enough." And then for the first time, he asked something that broke me a little. "Mom, do I have to love Jessica?" I took a breath and said, "You don't have to feel anything you don't feel. Just be kind. Love grows when it's real. You don't force it." He nodded, and I swear, I saw a little bit of peace return to his face. A few days after that, Jessica tried to confront me in the school parking lot. I was waiting for Ethan when she came up to my car, sunglasses on, holding some kind of parent volunteer badge. She said, "You're poisoning Ethan against me." I rolled my window halfway down. "No, Jessica. You're doing that all by yourself." She clenched her jaw. "You'll regret making me the villain." I smiled, not in a smug way. "Just tired. I don't need to make you anything. You already decided who you want to be." Then I drove off. Since the court ruling, Mark's been more cautious. He drops Ethan off alone again. We barely talk beyond logistics. Ethan's therapy, yes, I got him into therapy, has been helping. His therapist says he's opening up more, regaining confidence, and that's all I need to hear. I don't know what will happen with Jessica down the road. Maybe she'll realize she can't force love. Maybe she won't, but I've stopped worrying about her. Because while she's been busy trying to claim credit for teaching gratitude, I've been teaching Ethan something far more important. What healthy love actually looks like. And that's a lesson he'll never have to rehearse. Final update. 1 year later. It's been almost a full year since the Thank Jessica First argument exploded into lawyers, courtrooms, and tears. I can't believe how far things have come. And how much calmer our lives are now. For a long time I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. For Jessica to find some new way to make things difficult. But this time, it feels like the storm really passed. After the custody clarification and all the fallout that followed, things changed drastically between Mark and Jessica. At first, I didn't care to know what was going on in their house. I just wanted Ethan safe and emotionally steady. But over the months, Ethan started mentioning little things that gave me clues. Jessica stopped showing up at drop-offs completely. Then she stopped coming to Ethan's soccer games. He said she was always mad or didn't feel like it. By fall, she had moved into the guest room, and Mark was the one doing most of the parenting again when Ethan stayed there. It wasn't shocking, honestly. Their relationship had been built on control, not partnership. Once the court ruled that she wasn't a co-parent, I think she lost the leverage she had. She couldn't play perfect mom anymore, and Mark couldn't hide behind her micromanaging. In October, Mark called me, which was rare. His voice sounded defeated. He said, "Jess and I are separating." I didn't gloat. I just said, "I'm sorry, that must be hard." He sighed. "It's probably for the best." She wanted a say in everything, even stuff that wasn't hers to control. I should have stopped it sooner. That was the first time in years he'd admitted he should have done anything differently. I thanked him for saying that, even though part of me wanted to scream. "You think?" But I kept it civil, because for the first time, we were having a real conversation about what was best for Ethan, not about what would make the adults feel better. Ethan started therapy sessions every other week instead of weekly by winter, because his therapist said he was making great progress. He was less anxious, more confident, and more open with his feelings. One day he said, "Mom, I feel like I can breathe again." That hit me hard. I didn't realize how much tension he'd been carrying until it was gone. Around Thanksgiving, Mark and I actually managed to co-host a small holiday dinner for Ethan. It wasn't anything fancy, just turkey, mashed potatoes, and too many pies. We agreed to keep it light and drama-free, and for the first time in almost 8 years, we actually pulled it off. When Mark showed up, he looked human again. Not stressed, not defensive, just present. At one point during dinner, Ethan laughed so hard he almost spit out his drink, and I looked at Mark, and we both started laughing too. It wasn't forced, it wasn't tense. Just normal. After dinner, when Ethan went upstairs to play, Mark helped me with the dishes. He said, "You know, I think I get it now." "About gratitude," I raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah?" He nodded. "It's not about being thanked for every little thing. It's about being someone who makes a kid feel thankful without having to ask for it." I didn't respond right away. I just handed him a towel to dry a plate, and he said, "I really messed up by letting Jessica run things like that. I thought I was keeping the peace, I didn't realize I was teaching Ethan to be afraid of conflict. That sentence right there. That was the closure I didn't even know I needed. We stood there quietly for a while before he said, "Thank you for protecting him. Even when I didn't get it, it took everything in me not to cry." Things continued to improve after that. Ethan started playing basketball in the winter and asked Mark to coach part-time. I could see them rebuilding something real, not just the kind of forced relationship divorced parents sometimes fake for show. As for Jessica, she eventually moved out of Mark's house completely. She tried one last thing. She sent Ethan a goodbye letter, which Mark had the decency to show me first. It was manipulative, full of, "I hope you'll remember how much I loved you" lines. Like she was a martyr, Mark decided not to give it to him. Instead, he told Ethan, "Sometimes grown-ups love in ways that aren't healthy, but that doesn't mean you did anything wrong." That was one of the proudest moments I've ever had for him. Ethan asked me once if Jessica would ever come back. I told him, "Probably not, honey, but that's okay. Some people come into our lives to teach lessons. Not all of them are meant to stay." He nodded like he understood. By spring, we had something we hadn't had in years: stability. Ethan's grades went up. He started sleeping better, and he laughed more. He even started volunteering at an animal shelter through his school. When I asked why, he said, "I just like helping people who can't say thank you. It feels good." That made me smile because it proved something. He understood gratitude far better than any chart or forced speech could teach him. Last month we had a family therapy session, just the three of us. The therapist asked Ethan what he's learned from everything that happened. He said, "I learned that love isn't something you have to prove. If it's real, people know." I swear the room went silent for a full minute. The therapist looked at me and Mark and said, "I think he's doing just fine." She was right. Sometimes I still think about how chaotic things used to be. The texts, the power plays, the tears at bedtime. It all feels like a different lifetime now. There's peace in our home again. And it's not the kind that comes from silence or avoidance. It's the kind that grows when you stop fighting battles that never should have existed in the first place. I know some people reading this might expect a dramatic twist. Maybe Jessica showing up again or some new argument erupting. But the truth is, sometimes the happy ending is just quiet. Steady peace. Mark and I aren't best friends, and we probably never will be. But we respect each other again. And Ethan knows that no matter what happens, both his parents have his back, and that's enough. The other night, before bed, Ethan said, "Mom, I think you're the best because you never make me say it." I laughed and hugged him. That's how you know it's real. And for the first time in years, I slept without replaying any arguments in my head. No anxiety, no bitterness, just peace. Because at the end of the day, love doesn't need an audience. It just needs to be felt. Stories number 8. My old manager tried to act like he didn't know me today. Karma did its thing. You ever have one of those moments that live rent-free in your head for years? Like a loop that plays whenever you think about who you used to be versus who you've become. That's what this story is for me. It's not just petty revenge. It's a reminder that sometimes life keeps the receipts. Back when I was 23, I worked at this fancy kitchen appliance store in downtown Denver. It was the kind of place that catered to wealthy couples who wanted to buy a $600 blender and call it a lifestyle choice. I was fresh out of college, broke, and trying to prove myself. The manager, let's call him Derek, was one of those guys who looked like he practiced his power stance in the mirror. Always overgelled hair, always talking about grindset and corporate synergy like he was auditioning for The Office. Narcissist edition, Derek had a way of making people feel small. If you were late once, he'd humiliate you in front of customers. If you made a sale he didn't approve of, he'd take credit. He loved talking about team effort, but took every opportunity to remind us he was the alpha. There was one specific day that I'll never forget. It was December, holiday rush season, the store was chaos, and I was running back and forth between customers, trying to keep up. Derek was standing by the front door chatting with a rich couple instead of helping. One customer got frustrated because their order wasn't ready and started yelling at me. I tried to stay calm and said I'd fix it. Derek finally swooped in, not to back me up, but to loudly say, "You have to forgive our new hires. Some of them don't understand the expectations of high-end clientele yet." He said that right in front of everyone. I'd been there 6 months. That night I went home and cried. I didn't even tell my boyfriend, now husband, Evan, how bad it made me feel because I thought it was my fault for not being good enough. Fast forward a few weeks, Derek restructured the team. which meant I lost hours while his buddies got full-time schedules. I left soon after, landing a small admin job at a logistics company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. I promised myself I'd never let anyone make me feel that small again. Over the years, I built my career from scratch. I moved up from admin assistant to operations manager, learned supply chain software, got certified, and by 31, I was a senior logistics coordinator for a major tech company. I had a team, a great salary, and a boss who actually respected me. Still, every now and then, I'd think about Derek, the way he sneered when I spoke, the smug tone he used when coaching me in front of customers. I always wondered if he was still playing boss at that overpriced kitchen boutique. Then came today. Evan and I were at a local business networking brunch. He's an architect, and one of his firm's clients was hosting the event. We're standing there, chatting with people, when I hear a voice that I swear I know. That same nasal, self-satisfied tone. I turn, and boom, there's Derek. Slightly balder, slightly rounder, same smug energy. He's wearing one of those cheap-looking blazers that screams, "Trying too hard." He walks up to our small circle and introduces himself to Evan first. "Hi, I'm Derek Shaw, Regional Sales for Kitchen Pro Retail." "You must be with Arch One Design?" Evan shakes his hand politely. I just stand there, watching, waiting for the moment he realizes who I am, except he doesn't, or pretends not to. His eyes flicker toward me for a second, but there's no sign of recognition. He goes on and on about how his company partners with high-end clients, how he's grown his team regionally, and how he's very selective about who he hires because, quote, "not everyone can handle that level of professionalism." That one almost made me laugh out loud. Evan smiles, nods, and then introduces me. "This is my wife, Laura. She's the senior logistics coordinator for Redline Technologies." Derek's whole expression shifted. Like, visibly, that smirk melted into something stiff and uncomfortable. "Oh," he said. "Redline, wow. That's impressive." "Yeah," I replied, smiling. "We just wrapped a major contract with Kitchen Pro last quarter. I think my team negotiated with your procurement department." Evan caught it instantly. He looked at me with that subtle, "you sly genius" expression he does when he knows I'm about to drop the hammer. Derek blinked, clearly trying to recall something. Right, yes, I think I heard about that. We, had to rework some of our distribution channels, right?" I nodded sweetly. "Exactly. The ones your region was responsible for. My team found some inconsistencies in reporting, so we restructured vendor assignments. It was a pretty big deal." Evan sipped his drink to hide a grin. Derek's smile was pure panic at that point. He muttered something about needing another drink and excused himself, but karma wasn't done yet. An hour later, the host announced a raffle, free luxury appliance set, courtesy of Kitchen Pro. Everyone clapped politely. Then the host added, "And a special thanks to Redline Technologies for streamlining their logistics this year. We literally couldn't have stocked half this event without their partnership, I swear to God." Derek looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. He gave a tight little nod from across the room. I raised my glass to him. That moment felt like years of bottled humiliation finally evaporated. Not because I embarrassed him, though that was admittedly satisfying, but because I realized something deeper. I didn't need his approval anymore. "I never did." Evan leaned over and whispered, "So that's the guy?" "Yep," I said. He smirked. "I see what you meant by restructuring his team." We both burst out laughing. On the way home, I thought about that 23-year-old me crying after a shift, thinking I'd never be enough. I wish I could go back and tell her, "You're not small. You're just surrounded by people who want to keep you that way." I didn't say anything to Derek after that, and I don't plan to. He's just someone in my rearview mirror now, an example of the kind of person I refuse to become. But sometimes, when I walk into my office, coffee in hand, leading a meeting full of people who respect me, I think of him and I smile, because nothing feels better than quiet. Earned vindication, update, 6 months later. I didn't think I'd hear from Derek again, but life has a way of keeping things. Interesting. About 6 months after the networking brunch, I started noticing LinkedIn notifications popping up. I almost ignored them, until I realized Derek had sent me a connection request. I stared at his profile for a long time. Still the same hair gel, slightly more gray at the temples, still using words like synergy and optimization in his tagline. I could practically hear him narrating his own greatness in the background. Evan peeked over my shoulder and asked, "Are you going to accept it?" I laughed. No way. But I might reply. I did. Very short, polite, but pointed. Hi, Derek. Thanks for the connection request. I see you're still at Kitchen Pro. Congratulations on the promotions. Best of luck with your work. I didn't expect a reply, but a few hours later, one appeared. Hi, Laura, thanks. It's been a while. I realized things were awkward when you worked under me. I'd like to clear the air and maybe catch up for coffee sometime. I think I owe you an apology. I almost spit out my coffee apology. After all these years, I didn't respond right away. I needed to think about it. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely. Part of me was curious. I told Evan about it. He frowned. Do you want to meet him? Or is this some ego thing? I thought about that for a long time. No, I didn't need validation. But I did want closure. Not revenge, not a confrontation, just peace. So I replied, Derek, I appreciate the gesture. I think we both know the professional paths we've taken. I'm happy with where I am, and don't need a meeting to reconcile the past. I wish you the best moving forward. No response came after that, and honestly, I didn't expect one. That was fine. I felt lighter than I had in years. Then came the surprise, about 2 weeks later. My office received an email from Kitchen Pro's corporate HR. They wanted to invite Redline Technologies to participate in a new regional pilot program for supply chain efficiency. The kicker? Derek was leading the project. He had personally recommended our company because of the work I'd led last year. Evan laughed when I showed him the email. Guess he finally realized he couldn't manage you, or your team. I smiled. Yeah, but that's the funny part. I didn't have to tell him. I didn't have to prove anything. My work spoke for itself. We ended up taking the project. And over the next few months, I worked directly with Derek on calls and reports. It was professional, cold, and efficient. He was careful with his tone now. No smugness, no I know better comments. He was cordial but distant, and that was perfect. Every time he said something like, we'll follow your lead on this, I felt this quiet vindication. Not the gloating kind, but the deep, satisfying kind. The kind that comes from knowing you've earned respect the hard way, without ever having to ask for it. One afternoon, after a particularly long call, Evan asked, do you feel satisfied now? I leaned back in my chair. Completely. The thing about people like Derek is that they think they control the narrative. But time has a funny way of flipping the script. I didn't just survive him, I outgrew him. Ethan, who had been listening from the living room, piped up, you mean like when you beat the video game on hard mode? I laughed. Exactly like that, kiddo. Hard mode. And I didn't cheat. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about Derek at all. It hadn't been for a long time. It was about proving to myself that I could succeed on my terms. Without bending to someone else's ego, the best part? Derek's old tricks don't work on me anymore. He's just another professional contact now. No longer the person who made 23-year-old me doubt herself. That girl, she would have loved this moment. But she also would have been proud of who I've become. Because life doesn't always hand you immediate satisfaction. Sometimes it hands you delayed, quiet vindication, and honestly, that's the sweetest kind. Final update, 10 years later. It's wild how life circles back in ways you never expect. 10 years have passed since that networking brunch with Derek. And honestly, I hardly even think about him anymore. But every so often, I remember that smug little smirk he used to wear. And I can't help but smile. Not because I'm vindictive, but because I've grown past all of it. Redline Technologies is now a powerhouse in regional logistics. And I've been promoted to Director of Operations. I lead a team of over 50 people. And every single person respects me, not out of fear, but because I earned it. Every time I walk into a meeting, I think about that 23-year-old version of me, fresh out of college, scared and undervalued. I wish I could tell her how far she'd come. Evan and I are married, happier than ever, and we have 2 kids now. He's still my sounding board, my partner in everything. Our home is full of laughter, occasional chaos, and the kind of love that doesn't require constant reassurance. I make sure our kids understand what healthy respect looks like, both giving it and expecting it. Derek? Last I checked, he's still at Kitchen Pro, occasionally. I see his name pop up in industry news. Sometimes in promotions, sometimes in corporate reshuffles. I don't care. I know the truth. The respect I've earned wasn't handed to me. And no amount of LinkedIn connections or awkward professional encounters could change that. Sometimes people from my early career reach out to me, asking for advice or mentorship. I tell them one thing above all else. Don't let anyone make you doubt your worth. Not then, not now, not ever. The best revenge is living well, and honestly, that's exactly what I did. I'm proud. Not because Derek finally acknowledged me, or because I proved him wrong, but because I never needed to. I grew, I succeeded, I loved, and I learned to never let anyone's ego overshadow my own value. Some people spend their lives chasing validation. I spent mine building something real. Career, family, respect. And it feels like a victory far sweeter than any petty win ever could. Because in the end, the only opinion that truly matters is your own. Stories number 9. My husband got to walk away from everything, and somehow I'm the one drowning. I don't even know where to start. Maybe with the moment I realized I was really done, that was about 2 months ago. Though honestly, the cracks started long before that. You know when you wake up one day and realize you've been holding your breath for years? That's what it felt like. I'd spent so long walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace, trying not to start another argument. He, let's call him Jake, wasn't physically abusive, but he had this way of turning everything into my fault. If the bills were late, it was because I didn't remind him. If the kids were loud, it was because I didn't discipline them right. If he was unhappy, it was because I wasn't fun anymore. When I finally said I wanted a divorce, he laughed at first. Actually laughed. Then he realized I wasn't joking, and things escalated fast. He started pacing, throwing his hands up, saying things like, "You'll never make it on your own, and you think I'm the problem. But wait till you see what life's like without me." It got to the point where I locked myself and the boys in the bedroom and called the police. Not because he hit me, but because I didn't feel safe. The officers were calm, professional. They helped him pack a few bags. He left that night. He took his truck, his tools, his gaming setup, and moved in with his cousin Chris, who lives 6 hours away. Since then, it's been me and the boys, Ethan and Caleb, trying to keep things together. And I'm tired. Jake's paid me $800 in child support total. He says he can't afford more for a few months, because he's trying to get back on his feet. Meanwhile, he's living rent-free with Chris, posting Instagram stories from lakes, barbecues, and some new bar they found in town. He told me he won't be able to pick up the boys for a while, because his job schedule is unpredictable. So that means every single thing: bills, debt, groceries, daycare, doctor's appointments, homework is on me. I can't even afford the apartment anymore. I've been juggling bills, borrowing a bit from my credit card, trying to sell some furniture. I even applied for a second job, but I don't know how I'd manage childcare if I got it. My sister Laura has been helping as much as she can. She lives 20 minutes away and watches the boys after school a couple of days a week. She's been a lifesaver. She even found a cheaper place for us, smaller, but clean, safe, and in a decent neighborhood. I was counting on my insurance payout to help with the move, but I didn't realize that money was going straight toward the car loan. So now, instead of having the few $1,000s I'd been planning on, I have nothing, literally nothing. I sat at my kitchen table last week, surrounded by bills, and just stared at the numbers. Rent, utilities, groceries, gas, school supplies. It all adds up so fast by the 1st of next month. I'll be over $5,000 behind, and yet Jake gets to start over. He gets to play the single dad card when it suits him. He calls the boys sometimes, but always when it's convenient for him. Usually when they're already asleep. He tells them he misses them so much, then goes days without texting again. Meanwhile, I'm trying to hold it together so they don't see me cry. There's this constant ache in my chest, like I'm failing them. Like no matter how hard I work, it's never going to be enough. I've had nights where I've sat on the bathroom floor just staring at the wall, trying not to completely lose it. And the worst part? I could fix a lot of this by moving in with my grandparents in Missouri. They have a big old house, and I could stay rent-free until I get back on my feet. It would mean leaving this city, but it might be the only way to survive. Except Jake's already threatened to take me to court if I try to take his kids away. He actually said those words, "You're not taking my kids away from me." This from the man who hasn't seen them in 2 months and refuses to make the drive. If I move out of state, he'll twist it into abandonment. He's already hinted that he'll use everything he can to get custody. The irony is that I've never once said he can't see them. I've been begging for him to be involved. I've suggested 50-50 from day one. I've sent him schedules, school info, everything. He doesn't even respond half the time, and yet somehow, I'm the one who's afraid of losing them. The double standard is exhausting. When a dad walks away, people say, he's struggling, or he just needs time. When a mom does, she's a monster. She's heartless. She's selfish. There are moments when I look at myself in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. My hair's a mess. I've lost weight. My eyes are constantly puffy from crying. I feel like a ghost of the person I used to be. The other day, Ethan asked me, "Mom, why doesn't Dad come visit us anymore?" I didn't know what to say. I told him Dad was working hard, that he loves them very much, that he'll see them soon. Then I went into my room and cried into a pillow so he wouldn't hear. I don't want my kids to grow up thinking this is normal, that dads can just walk away and it's fine, that moms have to hold everything together and smile through the pain. Laura keeps telling me I'm stronger than I think, that I'll get through this, that one day Jake's choices will catch up with him. But right now, all I can see is the pile of overdue bills and the empty chair at the dinner table. Sometimes I scroll through social media and see posts from people who successfully co-parent, and I wonder how. I'm doing everything right, communicating, keeping him updated, being flexible, and it still feels like I'm screaming into a void last night. I poured myself a cheap glass of wine and sat on the balcony after the kids went to bed. The air was warm, the city quiet. I thought about packing everything and just going to Missouri anyway. Maybe fighting him in court would be worth it if it meant having peace. Then I thought about how exhausted I already am, and the idea of court, lawyers, custody hearings, it made my stomach turn. So here I am, writing this because I have nowhere else to put it. Tomorrow I'll start calling rental offices. See if anyone's willing to work with me. I'll talk to my boss about extra hours. I'll figure something out. I always do. But tonight I just want to cry, because I'm so damn tired of doing this alone update. I finally made a choice, and I'm learning that peace sometimes looks nothing like what you expected. Hey everyone, it's me again. I didn't think I'd ever post an update, but so many of you reached out, and honestly, writing the first post helped more than I expected. It's been about 3 months since I wrote that, and a lot has changed. Some good, some bad, and some just complicated. When I posted, I was on the edge of losing everything. My apartment, my sanity, my faith in people. I was working full-time, scrambling to keep the lights on, and trying to hold it together for Ethan and Caleb. I was sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, crying in the shower, and pretending during the day that I was fine. Well, I wasn't fine. After that night I wrote the post. Things started spiraling, rent went up again, my car broke down, and I got hit with a medical bill for Caleb's ear infection because apparently my insurance didn't cover the urgent care we went to. I remember sitting in the parking lot of the clinic, holding that piece of paper and just laughing until I cried. Jake called the boys twice that month. Twice. He said he was busy with work, but I know from mutual friends that he's still living with Chris, still partying on weekends, still acting like a bachelor. I don't even think he realizes the damage he's doing, or maybe he does and just doesn't care. At one point, I asked if he could help with the car repair since I literally couldn't get to work without it. His response? "You should have thought about that before you decided to leave." That was the moment something in me broke, and also healed. If that makes sense, I realized I was waiting for him to suddenly become the man I'd begged him to be for years. And he wasn't going to, so I made a decision. I packed up what we could fit into my old SUV, sold what I couldn't bring, and drove to Missouri to stay with my grandparents. I didn't tell Jake until I was already halfway there. I sent him a text saying I was moving temporarily for financial reasons, that the boys would be starting school there, and that I was happy to arrange visits whenever he wanted. He exploded, called me selfish, said I was stealing his kids, threatened court again. I told him he's welcome to file, but until he starts actually parenting, I'm done chasing him for help he never gives, for a while. I was terrified he'd follow through with his threats, but he didn't. He sent a few nasty texts, then went quiet. I think part of him knew he wouldn't win. Judges look at actions, not empty words, and I have 2 years' worth of messages showing how little he's done. The first few weeks here were rough. Moving back into my grandparents' house at 32 felt humiliating. I slept in my old childhood bedroom with faded posters on the walls and a twin bed that creaked every time I rolled over. The boys shared the guest room. I cried a lot those first nights, out of guilt, exhaustion, and relief all mixed together. But then something shifted. I started to breathe again. There's space here. The rent is zero, my grandparents. Linda and George are kind and calm. They watch the boys after school. I found a job at a local dental office doing admin work. Less pay than before, but steady and predictable. The school here is small, and the boys love it. They ride the bus, they play outside, they laugh more. For the first time in a long time, I feel like we're okay. Jake didn't call for nearly 2 months after we moved. When he finally did, it was awkward. He asked to talk to the boys, but mostly just asked them what they were doing and said he missed them. He told me later he might visit around Christmas. I said okay. I don't even argue anymore. I'm done begging him to be a father. I've been going to therapy. It's through a local women's resource center, and it's free. My therapist, Kelly, said something that hit me hard the other day. She said, "You're grieving the idea of the life you thought you'd have, not the one you actually had." That's it exactly. I spent so long trying to fix something that was never built right to begin with. There are still bad days. Some mornings I wake up panicked, wondering how I'll rebuild everything. I still miss having a partner sometimes. Even if that partner wasn't good for me, the loneliness sneaks up on me at night, especially when the house is quiet and the boys are asleep. But there's also this new kind of peace I never knew before. I don't have to worry about someone's mood when I walk through the door. I don't have to defend myself for being tired or for letting the laundry sit another day. I'm learning small things again, like how to cook for fun, how to laugh without checking someone's reaction first, how to let my kids make noise without tensing up. The other day, Caleb spilled juice all over the kitchen floor. I was about to snap out of habit, but then I saw his face. He looked so scared, waiting for me to yell. I took a deep breath and said, "It's okay, buddy, let's clean it up together." He smiled and said, "You didn't get mad." That moment broke me and healed me all over again. It's not perfect. I still worry about money. I still get letters about unpaid bills back in my old state. I still wake up sometimes from dreams where Jake's yelling and I'm apologizing. But every day those things get a little quieter. And I've realized something huge. Peace doesn't always come wrapped in happiness. Sometimes it's just silence after years of chaos. Sometimes it's breathing without flinching. Laura came to visit last weekend with her boyfriend, Mike, and it was the first time in a long time that my family sat together and laughed. We grilled. The boys played in the yard. And for a second, I forgot everything that happened. Jake texted me that night asking if I'd moved on. I didn't respond. Because I have, in the only way that matters. I'm not sure what comes next. Maybe I'll stay here a year, maybe longer. Maybe I'll go back to school. Maybe I'll finally take the boys on a vacation somewhere. Even if it's just camping for a weekend. But I know this. Whatever happens, I won't go back, not to him. Not to that version of myself that kept waiting for permission to be happy. If anyone reading this is where I was a few months ago, scared, exhausted, stuck, please hear me when I say this. You are not crazy for wanting peace. You are not weak for leaving. You are not selfish for choosing survival. It's hard, yes. But there's a kind of freedom waiting on the other side that's worth every sleepless night. So, yeah. I guess that's the update. We're okay. Maybe for the first time ever. We're really okay. Final update. I stopped waiting for closure and started building my own peace. It's been about 8 months since my last update, and almost a full year since I left Jake. Honestly, if you'd told me a year ago I'd be sitting here on a Sunday morning, coffee in hand, watching my boys play in my grandparents' backyard without that constant ache in my chest, I wouldn't have believed you. I guess the best word for where I am now is steady. Not perfect, not healed completely, but steady. A lot has happened since my last post, some good, some bittersweet, and some moments that made me realize just how far I've come. After moving to Missouri, things slowly started falling into place. The dental office I work for offered me more hours and eventually made me a full-time employee. It's not glamorous, but I like it. My boss, Megan, is understanding about the boys and flexible when school stuff comes up. I even started taking online classes at night, just one at a time. But I'm working toward a certification in medical billing. It's something I can do remotely someday, and it feels good to have a goal again. The boys are thriving. Ethan joined the local soccer team, and Caleb is in a science club that meets after school. They're loud, goofy, and always leaving Legos where I step on them. But when I see them laughing with their friends, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time: relief. They're safe, they're happy, they're kids again, and Jake, he finally came to visit in December like he said he would. It was awkward, to put it mildly. He stayed at a motel in town and spent 2 days with the boys. They were excited at first, but it was clear they didn't really know how to be around him anymore. He kept trying too hard, bringing toys, overpromising trips he couldn't afford, acting like the fun dad while ignoring the months he'd been absent. One night, after he dropped them off, he asked if we could talk, against my better judgment. I said yes. We sat in his car outside my grandparents' house, and for the first time, I didn't feel nervous. He started with small talk, then drifted into that familiar tone, half apology, half accusation. He said he didn't realize how bad things had gotten, that he missed his family, that he wanted to try again. I listened. Then I told him no. I told him that the woman he used to control and gaslight doesn't exist anymore. That the person sitting next to him spent a year rebuilding her life from scratch and isn't about to burn it down for nostalgia. He went quiet. He didn't yell, which surprised me. He just nodded, like he finally understood. Then he said, "You really don't need me anymore, do you?" I said, "No, Jake, I really don't." He left the next morning without saying goodbye to the boys. I found out later from Laura, my sister, that he moved again, this time to Oklahoma for a new job. He still calls the boys once every couple of weeks, sometimes misses a week or two, but I've stopped chasing him about it. I can't force someone to be a parent. What's funny is, I used to think I needed closure, that someday he'd apologize, really apologize, and everything would make sense. But closure doesn't come from other people. It comes from finally accepting that you deserved better all along. And I did. Life here has its own rhythm now. I've made a few new friends. Rachel, one of the hygienists at work, and Tom, a single dad I met at one of Ethan's soccer games. We've gone out a few times, but I'm not rushing anything. It's weird. Being treated kindly after so many years of bracing for the opposite. He opens doors, listens, doesn't get defensive when I talk about boundaries. It feels peaceful. Even my grandparents, Linda and George, say they've noticed how much lighter I seem. My grandpa told me the other day, "You smile more now, kiddo." I missed that. I didn't realize how much I missed it too. Financially, things are still tight but manageable. I've paid off 2 of my old debts, and I'm slowly rebuilding my credit. I've learned how to live simply, and honestly, it's freeing. I don't need much. The boys and I go to the park on weekends, have movie nights at home, make pancakes on Sundays. There's laughter in our house again. I'm still in therapy with Kelly, and she's helped me see that I don't have to be strong all the time. That crying isn't failure. That rest isn't laziness. The other night, I found my old wedding ring in a jewelry box. For a long time, I couldn't even look at it. But this time, I just held it, turned it over in my hand and thought, this is just metal now. It doesn't hurt anymore. I've thought a lot about the woman I was when I wrote my first post. Scared, angry, tired. I wish I could hug her and tell her she was right to walk away. That the pain wouldn't last forever. That she'd laugh again, sleep through the night again, feel proud again. Because I do. This will probably be my last update. There's not much drama left to tell. And that's kind of the point. Life is quiet, peaceful, sometimes boring. Even, and after everything, boring feels like heaven. To everyone who read, commented, or messaged me back then, thank you. You helped me feel seen when I felt invisible. If you're reading this and you're where I was, trapped, exhausted, doubting yourself, please know this. Leaving isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning. You won't find all the answers overnight. You'll stumble, cry, backslide, doubt yourself, but one day you'll wake up, and the air will feel different, lighter. And you'll realize you made it out. I'm not the same woman I was a year ago. I'm someone new, someone free, and for the first time, that's enough. Stories number 10, my best friend called me his sister, and I don't know how to come back from that. I don't know what hurts more. The fact that I've been in love with my best friend for years, or the fact that he introduced me to someone yesterday as his sister. I've known him since college. We met freshman year, sitting next to each other in Intro to Psychology. He cracked a joke about how the professor sounded like a podcast narrator, and I laughed way too hard. That's how it started. His name's Adam, and he's been the constant in my life ever since. Through bad roommates, breakups, job changes, and 1,000 small moments, he's been the person I always came back to. We've seen each other at our best and worst. Him holding my hair back after a night of cheap tequila, me sitting in his car at 2 a.m. while he cried about his dad. We just fit. Everyone always said we did. People used to ask if we were dating, and we'd laugh it off. But deep down, every time someone asked, a part of me hoped he'd say yes. He never did. For years it was fine, almost. We both dated other people, but nothing serious ever stuck. I think part of me never really tried because I was waiting for him to see it too. Waiting for that movie moment where he'd look at me differently, realize I was the one who'd been there all along. But yesterday, that fantasy shattered. We were invited to a small barbecue at his coworker's house. He'd been talking about introducing me to his friends for weeks. I thought maybe this was finally something. He'd been texting more, complimenting me lately in ways that felt different. He even bought me flowers last week, just because I let myself hope, which was my first mistake. The barbecue was fun at first. Everyone was nice, the kind of people who wear linen shirts and talk about craft beer and hiking trails. I was nervous because I wanted to make a good impression. I wore a sundress I hadn't had a reason to wear in years, curled my hair, even painted my nails. Then it happened. One of his coworkers, a tall guy named Eric, asked how we knew each other. Adam laughed, slung his arm around my shoulders, and said, "This is Mia. She's basically my sister." The word hit me like a punch to the stomach. I laughed too, because what else was I supposed to do? But inside, everything went quiet. His sister, not his girlfriend, not his best friend, his sister. I smiled through the rest of the afternoon, made polite conversation, and even helped clean up after on the drive home. He was humming along to the radio like nothing had happened. I just stared out the window, counting streetlights until we reached my apartment. When we parked, he turned off the engine and said, "You were a hit, by the way. Everyone loved you." I smiled weakly and said, "Yeah, you too." He asked if I was okay. I told him I was just tired. He hugged me before I went inside. That familiar, easy hug that used to feel safe, but now just felt like salt on an open wound. I held it together until I closed my apartment door. Then I sank to the floor and cried, not the pretty, single-tear movie cry. The kind where your whole body shakes and you can't breathe. Because for years I told myself maybe he just didn't realize it yet. That maybe he needed time. That maybe one day it would click. But he had just told a group of people that I'm basically his sister. And that's not something you say about someone you secretly love. That's something you say about someone you'll never see that way. And now I don't know what to do. Do I pull away? Pretend it doesn't hurt? Try to keep things normal? He's texting me right now. Actually, sending a meme, asking if I got home okay. I stared at it for 10 minutes before replying with a simple, "Yeah." He doesn't know he broke something. Maybe he never will. I keep replaying the moment in my head. The way his arm felt around my shoulder, the casual tone in his voice, the laughter that followed, how normal it was for him, how final it felt for me. I thought about all the nights we stayed up talking until sunrise, the time he drove an hour to jumpstart my car in the rain, the time he danced with me in his kitchen after I'd had a horrible day, the time he kissed my forehead when I got sick and said, "You're my favorite person, you know that?" And I realize now, he meant it, just not the way I wanted him to. My mom once told me that timing is everything. Maybe she's right. Maybe if I'd said something earlier, if I'd been braver, things might have been different. But now it feels too late. If I tell him how I feel, it'll ruin everything. If I don't, I'll keep dying inside every time he calls me sis. I can already feel the distance creeping in. Though, he texted me goodnight tonight, and I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen until it went dark. Part of me wants to disappear for a while. Take a trip, stop responding, let the friendship fade. But the thought of losing him completely feels unbearable. He's been part of every chapter of my adult life. Who am I without him? I told Laura, my roommate, what happened. She's been saying for years that I should move on, that Adam would never see me that way. She tried to be gentle, but she also said, "You deserve someone who doesn't call you his sister." She's right. God, I hate that she's right. It's almost midnight now, and I keep thinking about the way he looked at me yesterday. Friendly, warm, utterly oblivious. I wish I could hate him for it. I wish I could make him feel a fraction of this ache, but I can't because I still love him. I don't know how to stop loving someone who never even noticed. I've been scrolling through my camera roll tonight, looking at all our pictures, birthdays, road trips, dumb selfies. There's one from last winter, me laughing, him with his arm around me, snow in our hair. Everyone who saw it commented how cute we looked. He replied, "My favorite girl, my partner in crime." It's cruel how words can mean completely different things depending on who's saying them. I think what hurts most is realizing that I wasn't waiting for him to love me. I was waiting for him to see me, and he never did, tomorrow. I'm supposed to meet him for coffee. We go every Sunday. I don't even know if I can go. If I do, I'll smile, listen to him talk about work, pretend nothing's wrong. If I don't, he'll notice. And I'll have to explain why, either way, I lose something. Maybe that's the part no one tells you about loving your best friend. It's not the rejection that kills you. It's the quiet after. The way everything looks the same, but none of it feels right anymore. Maybe someday I'll look back on this and feel grateful that I got to love someone so fully, even if it wasn't returned. Maybe someday I'll meet someone who looks at me and doesn't see a sister, but a partner. But tonight, all I can do is sit here, listening to the rain outside, wondering how to let go of the person I thought I was meant to be with. Because I can't be his sister, and I can't be his love, so I guess I'll just have to learn how to be me. Without him, I finally told him. And it didn't go how I thought. But maybe that's okay. It's been almost 4 months since I wrote that post about my best friend calling me his sister. Reading it now makes my chest ache, because I can feel how much I was breaking while pretending to be fine. I didn't plan to post again, but so much has happened that I need to get it out somewhere. After I wrote that, I did what I always do. I tried to push through. I kept meeting Adam for coffee on Sundays, kept laughing at his jokes, kept pretending I wasn't dying inside every time he hugged me. But something in me started to shift. Every conversation felt heavier. I caught myself zoning out when he talked, wondering how many more times I'd have to swallow my feelings just to stay in his life. One night my roommate Laura and I were watching some cheesy rom-com, and the main character gives this big, tearful confession. I laughed at first, but then I started crying. She muted the TV and said, "You can't keep doing this, Mia. Either tell him or let him go." So I decided to tell him. It took me 2 weeks to work up the courage. I almost chickened out a dozen times. I wrote and deleted texts, practiced in front of the mirror, even typed out a whole note in my phone in case I couldn't get the words out in person. We met at our usual coffee shop on a rainy Saturday afternoon. He was already there, sitting by the window with 2 lattes, mine with extra cinnamon. Like always, I almost lost my nerve right then. He smiled at me the same way he always does. And for a moment I wanted to forget why I'd come, but I couldn't keep living like that. We talked for a while about work, about his new project, about Eric getting engaged. Yeah, the same guy from the barbecue. Life's funny like that. Then I just blurted it out. "Adam, I need to tell you something." He looked at me, concerned. "What's wrong?" I said, "I can't keep pretending we're just friends. I love you." The words hung there, heavy and terrifying. His face went completely still, for a second. I thought maybe he'd say it back, that this would be one of those life-changing moments people talk about. But instead, he reached across the table and took my hand. He said, "Mia, I love you too, just not that way." It felt like someone had turned off all the sound in the room. I nodded, tried to smile, said I understood. He kept talking, saying things like, "You mean so much to me," and "I don't want to lose what we have." But it all blurred together. I told him I needed some space. He looked sad, but he said he understood. He hugged me when we left, and I held on too long because I knew it might be the last time. I cried the whole drive home. Laura was waiting when I got there. She didn't even ask what happened. She just pulled me into a hug and let me sob until I couldn't anymore. The next few weeks were awful. Everything reminded me of him. The playlist we made, the diner we always went to, the smell of his cologne on a hoodie he left at my place. I almost texted him a dozen times, but forced myself not to. Then something strange happened. Life kept going. I started spending more time with other people. Rachel, a girl from work who's been through her own heartbreak, and her brother Josh, who moved back from Colorado. The 3 of us started hiking on weekends, for the first time in months. I laughed without it hurting one evening. Rachel and I were sitting on her porch drinking wine, and she asked if I'd heard from Adam. I told her I hadn't. She said, "Good. Sometimes you have to lose someone to find yourself again." I thought about that for days, and she was right. The space gave me perspective. I realized how much of my identity had become wrapped around him, his moods, his texts, his approval. I'd built my entire world around being his person, and I forgot to be mine. A month later, Adam texted me. He said he missed me, asked if we could talk. I hesitated but agreed to meet for coffee. Same place, same table. It was different this time. He looked nervous, said he hated how things ended, that he never meant to hurt me. I told him I forgave him, but that I needed to keep some distance. He nodded and said, "You seem happier," and I am. He started dating someone new a few weeks after that, a girl named Sophie from his office. When he told me, I expected to feel jealous or crushed, but I didn't. I just felt calm, like it wasn't my problem anymore. That's when I knew I was finally healing. These days, we text occasionally. Birthdays, random memes, the kind of polite, distant friendship that doesn't hurt anymore. I still care about him, but not in the same way. The version of me who loved him with everything she had needed to exist, so I could become the version who loves herself more. Last weekend Josh asked me out, a real date, dinner. Not just hanging out. I said yes. I don't know where it'll go, but I'm not afraid this time. Sometimes I still think about that barbecue, about the word sister, about how it shattered me, but now I see it differently. It was the moment that forced me to stop waiting for someone to choose me and start choosing myself. I don't hate Adam. I don't regret loving him either. He taught me what it feels like to give everything to someone. Now I'm learning how to give that same energy to myself. So yeah, it didn't end like a movie. There was no dramatic kiss in the rain, no confession that changed everything. But maybe the quiet ending is better. Maybe peace is the real happy ending. Final update. I don't dream about him anymore. It's been a little over a year since I wrote that last post, and I think this will really be my final update. I don't feel the need to cry about it anymore. I just feel grateful, which is wild to say, considering how broken I was when I started writing all this. So much has changed. I moved into a new apartment back in the spring. It's small but sunny, with this creaky old balcony that overlooks a coffee shop. I planted succulents in mismatched mugs on the railing. My mornings are quiet now. Coffee, music, journaling. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking, he would love this, but it's a passing thought, not a wound. Josh and I dated for about 7 months. He was kind, gentle, and patient in a way I didn't realize I needed. We laughed a lot, we hiked, we cooked. We watched bad TV and made it fun, but as time went on, I realized we were better as friends. When we ended things, it wasn't sad. It was mutual, peaceful. We still talk sometimes. After that, I took a break from dating. I needed to figure out who I was when I wasn't orbiting someone else. I started therapy, started running, started saying yes to new things just because they scared me a little. Laura calls it my main character era. And honestly, she's not wrong. I also got a promotion at work. I'm leading a small design team now. It feels good to be trusted, to be seen. My therapist said something once that stuck with me. You used to love people who didn't look at you properly. Now you're learning to look at yourself. And then, there's Adam. He reached out a few months ago. Not in a weird or romantic way. He just texted to ask how I was doing. He's still with Sophie, and they seem genuinely happy. When he told me that, I expected to feel something sharp, but I didn't, just warmth. I was happy for him. We met up for coffee once. For old time's sake, it was nice, familiar, but different. He told me about his job, his dog, his plans. We talked about our friend group, laughed about dumb memories. It didn't sting this time when we hugged goodbye. It felt like closing a book I'd loved for a long time, one I might reread someday. But not because I need to, just because it mattered. That night, I came home and sat on my balcony for hours, just thinking about how far I've come, about how much I used to ache. I remembered that first post, crying in my car, feeling invisible, wondering if love would ever stop hurting. And now, I can honestly say it has. A few weeks ago, I met someone new. His name's Ethan. We met at a mutual friends game night, and he made me laugh so hard I almost spit out my drink. We've been taking it slow. Coffee, long walks, late night talks about everything and nothing. It's easy in a way that surprises me. I don't feel like I have to prove my worth. He just sees me, but even if it doesn't work out, even if it's just another short chapter, I'll still be okay, because I'm finally writing my own story, not waiting for someone else to give it meaning. I don't dream about Adam anymore. For a long time, I thought that was the saddest part, that forgetting would mean I never really loved him. But now I know it's the opposite. It means I did love him, deeply, and I let that love do its work. It broke me open, forced me to rebuild, and made room for something better. The other day, I was cleaning out my phone and found a photo of us from years ago. The two of us laughing at some dumb inside joke. His arm slung around me. I didn't delete it. I just smiled. It's a reminder that sometimes love doesn't end the way we want it to, but that doesn't make it a failure. It's just part of the growing. If anyone reading this is stuck in that same space I was, loving someone who doesn't love you back, wondering if it'll ever stop hurting, please believe me when I say it will. One day you'll wake up, make your coffee, play your music, and realize you haven't thought about them in weeks. And that's when you'll know you're free. So yeah, this is my goodbye, not to Adam, but to that version of me who believed love had to be painful to be real. She deserves rest. She deserves peace. And I think I finally gave it to her. Stories number 11. My boyfriend told me that if I can't accept that he gets to do things I can't, then we might need to reevaluate us. I honestly don't even know where to start. I guess I'm just sitting here staring at the wall trying to figure out if I'm overreacting, or if I'm finally seeing what's been in front of me this whole time. I've been with Tyler for almost 3 years. We met through mutual friends back when I just moved into the city after finishing grad school. He was charming. Not in that fake, over-the-top way, but the kind that made you feel like you were being really seen. He worked in marketing, always had funny stories about his coworkers, and he made me laugh in a way that no one else really did. I fell for him hard, The first year was incredible. We were that couple everyone said was so good together. We traveled. We went on late-night drives. We cooked ridiculous meals together. I thought he was it, the kind of person you plan futures with. But somewhere after we moved in together last spring, things started to shift. Nothing huge at first. Little comments, weird double standards that I brushed off because I didn't want to start a fight. Like, he'd go out for drinks after work with his coworkers, half of whom were women. And if I texted after 10 p.m., asking when he'd be home, he'd say I was being controlling. But if I went out with my friend Erica, he'd start texting me an hour in, asking who I was with. If there were guys there, when I was leaving, he'd say things like, "I just worry because you're pretty naive about guys." Or, "I just don't trust their intentions." I told myself he just cared. But the thing about caring is it's supposed to feel safe, not suffocating. The first real blow-up happened about 6 months ago. One of my old college friends, Luke, was in town for a weekend. He's gay, literally introduced his boyfriend to me before we even sat down for lunch. But when I told Tyler I was meeting Luke for coffee, he completely lost it. He said, "You didn't even ask me if that was okay." I told him I didn't realize I needed to ask permission to see a friend. He said, "It's about respect, Mia. I'd never go out one-on-one with another girl without you knowing." I said, "But you literally do that all the time." And he said, "That's different. You know I'm not interested in them." I don't even know what to say to that. I just shut down. I didn't want to fight, so I apologized even though I wasn't wrong. That became our pattern. Him setting rules and me walking on eggshells. Then last weekend, it all kind of came to a head. Tyler's company had their big annual party. It's a big deal. Fancy hotel ballroom, open bar, music, the whole thing. I'd gone last year and had fun, but this year, he told me spouses and partners weren't invited because of limited seating. Weird. But okay. That night, I was home with Erica, watching a movie, when she showed me an Instagram story from one of her friends who also works in marketing. And there was Tyler, clear as day, at the same event, arm around a woman I'd never seen before, laughing and holding drinks. My stomach dropped. I waited until he came home around midnight. He was a little buzzed, smiling, said the party was great. I asked him who the girl was. He sighed like I was being dramatic. "She's new, she's on my team." "Why are you always assuming the worst?" I showed him the photo and he said, "Seriously? You're stalking me now?" I told him I wasn't stalking. My friend literally saw it. And that's when he said it. "If you can't accept that I can do things you can't, then we need to reevaluate this relationship." I just stood there, silent. Because what the hell does that even mean? He said, "You have to understand, Mia. Guys and girls are just different. You get hit on everywhere you go. I don't make a big deal about it because I trust you. But you can't expect me to follow the same rules you do. That's not how relationships work," I told him. "No, that's exactly how relationships work. The same rules for both of us." And he said, "You're being childish. You're trying to make things equal that can't be equal. I don't think I've ever felt smaller." He went to bed like nothing happened. I sat in the living room until 3 a.m., just staring at my phone, scrolling through old pictures of us, trying to figure out where it went wrong. The next morning, he acted completely normal. Made coffee, kissed my forehead, said, "Don't be mad at me, okay? You overthink things." That's the thing with Tyler. He always manages to twist it so I feel like I'm crazy for being hurt. Since then, I've been replaying everything in my head. Like the time I told him I didn't like when he flirted with bartenders, and he laughed and said, "You're lucky I'm with you at all." Or the time he joked about how I should be grateful he's a guy who provides. He's never hit me or screamed or called me names, but somehow I feel smaller around him. Like I'm always trying to earn the right to be treated fairly. I told Erica what happened, and she just said, "Mia, he's gaslighting you." I hate that word because it gets thrown around so much, but she's right. He really is. I thought maybe I was losing it until I went home to visit my mom last weekend. We were cooking dinner, and she said, "You don't seem like yourself lately." I told her a little bit. Not everything, but enough. She got quiet and said, "Honey, love doesn't mean one person gets to set all the rules. I don't even know why I'm posting this. Maybe I just need to see it written down. Maybe because if I read someone else's story that said, 'My boyfriend says I have to accept double standards or leave,' I'd tell her to run. So why am I still here? Maybe because I remember the version of him that made me feel safe. The guy who held my hand during my dad's surgery. The one who danced with me in our kitchen at midnight. That guy felt real, but lately, It's like he's been replaced by someone who only sees me as something to control. We haven't really talked since that night. We go through the motions, work, dinner, small talk. But there's this cold distance between us, and part of me is terrified to bring it up again because I already know what he'll say, that I'm overreacting, that I'm emotional, that I don't understand how men are. I keep thinking about what he said. We might need to reevaluate the relationship. Maybe he's right. Maybe we do. I used to think reevaluating meant figuring out how to fix things, but now I think it might mean figuring out how to leave. I've started secretly looking at apartments. Erica said I can crash with her for a bit if I need to. I've packed a box of my stuff and shoved it in the back of the closet, just in case. Every night I lie awake next to him, wondering how something that once felt so easy turned into this slow, quiet kind of pain. I still love him, I hate that I do, but I'm starting to love myself more. And maybe that's the beginning of the end. I don't know if I'll post again. Maybe I'll just quietly slip away and start over somewhere new, where I can breathe without having to ask permission. Because if loving someone means accepting that they get to do things I can't, then maybe I'd rather be alone. Update. I finally stopped waiting for him to be the man I thought he was. It's been almost 5 months since I posted about Tyler telling me that if I couldn't accept that he could do things I couldn't, then we might need to reevaluate our relationship. I read that line again last night. It still makes my stomach twist. Back then, I felt so confused, like maybe I was crazy for feeling like something was wrong. Now I realize that was the whole point, to keep me doubting myself so I wouldn't notice how much I'd been shrinking. After that post, things between us got quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was that kind of silence that feels heavy, like you're both holding your breath waiting for something to break. We weren't fighting, but we weren't really together either. He'd come home from work, throw his jacket on the couch, scroll on his phone, and ask half-heartedly, "You good?" while barely looking up. I'd nod, cook dinner, pretend I was fine, but every time I looked at him, I saw a stranger. Then about a month later, the truth finally showed itself. Not in some big dramatic way, but through something stupid. I was doing laundry, and I grabbed one of his jackets to empty the pockets. Inside was a receipt from a restaurant across town. 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, and a date about a week earlier. I hadn't been there with him. I stared at that piece of paper for what felt like forever. I didn't even feel angry at first, just numb. Like everything I'd been pretending not to see was finally printed in front of me in black ink. That night when he came home, I didn't yell or cry. I just handed him the receipt and said, "Want to tell me about this?" He didn't even flinch. He just sighed and said, "You're really going to make this into a thing?" That sentence will stay with me forever. He told me it was just dinner, that she was a client, that I was overreacting again. The same script. Same tone, same way of making me question my own reality. I told him I didn't believe him. He rolled his eyes and said, "Then maybe we really do need to reevaluate things." And that was it. Something in me just switched off. I didn't cry this time. I didn't beg or argue. I just went to the bedroom, pulled out the box I'd been hiding in the closet, and started packing. He looked shocked, like he genuinely didn't think I'd ever actually leave. He said, "Mia, come on. You're being dramatic. You're not really doing this," but I was. Erica came over within an hour after I texted her. She didn't even ask questions. Just helped me throw the rest of my stuff into bags. Tyler followed us around, alternating between guilt-tripping and pretending not to care. When we were finally walking out the door, he said, "You're going to regret this. No one else will put up with you." I didn't even turn around. I just said, "That's the point." I stayed with Erica for a few weeks, until I found a tiny apartment on the other side of town. It's not much. Creaky floors, a leaky faucet, walls thin enough to hear my neighbors argue about TV shows. But it's mine. The first night there, I slept on an air mattress surrounded by boxes. And for the first time in months, I actually slept. The first few weeks were weirdly hard. I missed him. Or maybe I missed the version of him I built in my head. I kept expecting my phone to buzz with his name. When it finally did, he texted, "Hope you're doing okay." I didn't respond. Then a few days later, he texted again, a long paragraph about how he'd been thinking, how he didn't mean to hurt me, how he wanted to talk. I almost gave in. I even started typing a response, but then I remembered that night in the kitchen, when he said he could do things I couldn't, and how small I'd felt hearing it. I deleted the draft and blocked his number instead. That was the real turning point. After that, it was like I could finally breathe again. I started spending more time with Erica, with Ben, a friend from work who'd been nothing but kind, with my mom. I went back to therapy. I started running again, cooking for myself again, laughing at stupid shows without worrying if he'd roll his eyes, and slowly, I began to realize how much energy I'd spent trying to make myself small enough to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. The scariest part wasn't leaving. It was realizing how close I'd come to convincing myself I deserved that kind of love. A few weeks ago, I ran into one of Tyler's old coworkers, Jake, at a coffee shop. We chatted for a bit, and he said casually, "Man, can't believe you and Tyler broke up." He really messed that up. I just smiled and said, "Yeah, he did." Jake kind of nodded and said, "He's been seeing someone from work, but honestly, he's not the same. He seems miserable." And for once, that didn't make me feel vindicated. It just made me sad for the person I used to love, the one who lost himself somewhere between ego and fear. But it also made me grateful that I got out before I lost myself too. Now it's just me, my little apartment, my peace. I'm not dating anyone. I don't want to. Not yet. I've learned that it's better to be alone than to be with someone who uses love as leverage. Sometimes, late at night, I'll catch myself thinking about that moment. Him standing in the doorway, saying we needed to reevaluate the relationship. And I realize he was right. We did. He just didn't expect the evaluation to end with me walking away. Now when I hear that word, reevaluate, I think about the things I learned after I left. Like how I love having breakfast alone by the window, how I can fix things around the apartment myself, how I'm not difficult or dramatic or too much, how freedom, once you taste it, makes you wonder why you ever settled for control. The other day, Erica and I went to a concert downtown. I wore a red dress I never used to wear because Tyler said it was too much. I danced the entire night. I didn't worry if someone was watching. I didn't check my phone. I didn't ask for permission when I got home. I looked in the mirror and realized I didn't look like someone who'd been broken anymore. I looked like someone rebuilding herself. And maybe that's even better. So, if anyone out there is reading this and wondering if it's really that bad, if you're overreacting, if love is supposed to feel like walking on glass, it's not. You'll know it's right when you stop feeling small. Tyler used to say that men and women are just different. I guess he was right about one thing. I grew, and he didn't. And that's the biggest difference of all. Final update. 1 year later, I finally understand what peace feels like. It's been almost exactly a year since I packed my things, left Tyler's apartment, and started over with nothing but a few boxes, a half-broken coffee maker, and a version of myself I barely recognized. I wasn't planning on posting again, but tonight, I was sitting on my couch, lights low, cat curled up next to me, a glass of wine on the table, and I realized something. I don't think about him anymore. Not really. Not the way I used to. That deserves to be said out loud. When I left, I thought healing would look like strength. Loud, confident, maybe even a little cinematic. But it didn't. It was quiet, boring even. It looked like paying bills on time, fixing my leaky sink by myself, going for walks after work, and learning how to cook eggs the way I liked them. Not the way he did. There wasn't one big turning point, it was 100 small ones. Like the morning I realized I'd gone an entire week without checking his social media. Or the day I deleted all our old photos, and instead of crying, I just shrugged and closed the laptop. Or the first time I caught myself laughing, really laughing, at something stupid Erica said, and it didn't feel like there was a shadow over it. For the first few months after I left, I kept wondering if I'd made the right choice. I'd wake up in my tiny apartment, hear the city noise outside, and feel this ache in my chest. Not for him exactly, but for the version of life I thought I was supposed to have. The one where I was someone's girlfriend, someone's partner, someone's other half. But the more time passed, the more I realized that the ache was just space. Space I'd never had before. Space that was finally mine to fill. I started therapy again. My therapist, Dr. Patel, asked me once, "When did you stop trusting your own judgment?" It took me weeks to answer that. I think it was a slow erosion. Every time Tyler told me I was overreacting, every time he made me question my own reality, every time he called double standards just how things are, rebuilding that trust with myself was harder than leaving him. But now, a year later, I can say I finally believe my own feelings again. I've made new friends. Erica introduced me to a book club that meets at this little cafe downtown. There's Claire, who's brutally honest in the best way, and Sam, who's always late but somehow the glue that keeps us all laughing. We talk about books half the time and life the other half. These are people who don't want anything from me. They just like me for who I am. I didn't realize how rare that was until I had it. And then there's Evan. I met him 3 months ago through a mutual friend. He's nothing like Tyler. He's quiet, kind, thoughtful in ways that feel almost unfamiliar. The first time he came over, I apologized for my messy kitchen, and he said, "It looks lived in. That's a good thing." When I told him about my past, not all the details, but enough, he didn't interrupt or try to fix it. He just listened. He texts me good morning every day. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. He makes me coffee and remembers how I take it. When we go out, he never comments on what I wear. When I go out without him, he just says, "Have fun. Text me when you get home safe." That's it. No guilt, no double standard, no control. The first time I noticed the difference, I cried afterward, not because I missed Tyler, but because I finally understood how wrong it all was before. I don't know where things with Evan will go. I'm not rushing it. The beautiful part is that I don't need it to go anywhere specific. For the first time, I'm not chasing some perfect picture. I'm just living, and that's enough. Sometimes I still think about Tyler. Not often, but when I do, it's like remembering someone from a dream. Blurry around the edges, distant, faded. I wonder if he's still convincing some new girl that men and women are just different. I hope she figures it out faster than I did. Last month, I got a text from an unknown number. It was him, he said. "I've been thinking about you lately." I miss what we had. I didn't reply. I didn't even feel angry. Just tired. I blocked the number again. And then I went back to making dinner. That's when I realized that's peace, not indifference. Not revenge, just calm. When I look back now, I don't hate the girl who stayed as long as she did. She wasn't weak. She just believed love was supposed to hurt a little. She thought patience would fix everything. But she's the reason I'm here now. She got me out. I still have that red dress. The one Tyler said was too much. I wore it again last weekend to a friend's engagement party. I danced until my feet hurt when I got home. I caught my reflection in the mirror, hair messy, lipstick smudged, and I smiled, because I finally recognized the woman looking back at me. She doesn't need anyone's permission. She doesn't have to shrink herself to fit inside someone else's comfort. She's whole. If you told me a year ago that I'd be writing this without crying, I wouldn't have believed you, but I'm here, I'm free. And if you're reading this, and you're still where I was, questioning, doubting, scared, please know that freedom doesn't always start with fireworks. Sometimes it starts with a quiet decision to pack a box, to walk out the door, to choose yourself. And if you ever wonder whether it's the right choice, it is. Because the right person will never make you feel like love is something you have to earn. Stories number 12. My stepdaughters and I did a group Halloween costume their mom hated. And now I'm wondering if I crossed a line. Halloween is supposed to be fun, right? That's what I thought, at least. But apparently, dressing up as a group with my stepdaughters has turned into a full-blown custody battlefield. For context, I, 34F, married Daniel, 38M, 3 years ago. He has 2 daughters from his previous marriage, Lily, 11, and Hannah, 9. Their mom, Tara, and I have a mostly polite, but sometimes tense, co-parenting relationship. She and Daniel have 50-50 custody. And I try to stay in my lane. I'm not their mom, but I love them deeply and treat them like part of my family. I grew up loving Halloween. My mom used to go all out with costumes and decorations. And I've always dreamed of sharing that same kind of excitement with kids. So when Lily and Hannah started getting excited about Halloween this year, I jumped in to help them come up with ideas. They were originally thinking of going as witches. But then Hannah saw a clip from Hocus Pocus and got obsessed. She said, "We could all go as the Sanderson sisters." Lily loved the idea immediately and said I should be Winifred. I laughed and said sure. I've got the red hair and the dramatic energy for it. So we made it a project. We spent 3 weekends thrifting costumes, adding glitter and lace, painting props, the whole thing. It was genuinely fun, the kind of easy, giggly, silly time I don't always get with them. When Daniel told Tara about the costume plans, she apparently didn't react much, just said, "Okay," and changed the subject. So we assumed everything was fine. Fast forward to Halloween weekend, it was our custody week, and we took the girls to the community trunk-or-treat event. We all dressed up, me as Winifred, the girls as Sarah and Mary, and people loved it. Strangers were asking for pictures, the girls were glowing. They said it was the best Halloween ever. I was honestly over the moon. Then Tara saw the photos, the next day. Daniel got a long text from her saying she thought it was highly inappropriate for me to do a family costume with her daughters. She said I was trying to replace her, and that I had crossed a boundary by branding myself as part of their family image. She also apparently showed the pictures to her mom, and her mom told her it was weird that the girls were dressed as a trio with me instead of their actual mother. I was crushed when Daniel told me, "I know Tara doesn't love me. I get that it's complicated, but I never once tried to take her place. The girls wanted to do this. It wasn't my idea." When Lily came back from her mom's house the next week, she was quiet. I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Mom said it was weird that we did matching costumes with you." My heart sank. I asked, "Did you like dressing up, though?" And she nodded right away, but then she whispered, "I don't want Mom to be mad at me." That broke me. I didn't say anything negative about Tara to the girls. I never do. But I felt sick. This was supposed to be something lighthearted and fun, and somehow it turned into guilt and awkwardness for them. Daniel tried to smooth things over. He texted Tara and said, "The girls wanted to do it. It wasn't meant to disrespect you." Her response was basically, "You need to set better boundaries with your wife." We haven't spoken since. Now I feel torn. On one hand, I know my intentions were pure. I wasn't trying to play mom. I just wanted the girls to have fun and feel supported. On the other hand, I can see how it might sting for Tara to see me front and center in what looks like a family moment. Especially since she didn't get to share that memory herself. The girls have already asked what we'll dress as next year. I changed the subject because honestly, I don't even know if I should be involved again. Daniel keeps telling me I didn't do anything wrong. He said, "You're part of their lives, and it's normal to share things like this." But I can't shake the feeling that I accidentally poured salt in a wound I didn't mean to touch. A few nights ago, I overheard the girls FaceTiming their mom. They were showing her their leftover Halloween candy, and I heard Lily say, "Mom, it wasn't weird. It was just fun." Then Hannah chimed in, "Yeah, we weren't replacing you. We just liked dressing up with me." I wanted to cry, not because I felt validated, but because they shouldn't have to defend themselves like that. Since then, I've been thinking a lot about what stepmom actually means. Where's the line between being involved and overstepping? Between loving the kids like your own and remembering they already have a mom? I never wanted to compete. I just wanted them to feel loved, to feel like they have more people in their corner, not fewer. It's weird. When I was younger, I thought being a stepmom meant learning how to love someone else's kids, but now I think it's about learning how to love within limits. The girls are coming over this weekend, and I know it's going to come up again. I'm planning to tell them that it's okay to have fun with me and love their mom at the same time. That there's enough room for all of us, even if the grown-ups are still figuring it out. But deep down, I keep wondering if maybe I should have known better. Maybe it wasn't about the costume itself. Maybe it was about what it represented. I don't regret doing it. But I do regret that it made things harder for the girls. And that's the part I can't stop thinking about. Update. I didn't mean to start a war over Halloween, but now everything feels different. Hey everyone, I didn't think I'd post again, but a lot has happened since the Halloween thing blew up and, honestly, writing here feels like the only place I can get my thoughts straight. It's been a few weeks since the costume drama. Things between me, Daniel, and Tara have been tense, not explosive, just this constant low-level awkwardness that hangs in the air. Every text feels like it's being worded through a legal filter. Every pickup and drop-off feels like a cold business transaction. After my first post, I tried to give Tara some space. I stopped offering ideas for activities. I let Daniel handle all communication. I figured that maybe if I just stepped back a bit, she'd calm down. But then came the parent-teacher conference at Lily's school. It was supposed to be just Daniel and Tara. I didn't expect to be invited, and I didn't plan on going. But the teacher, Mrs. Franklin, emailed all three of us. Apparently she didn't realize the family dynamic. She said, "It would be great if all the adults in Lily's home life could attend," Tara replied, all with, "I think this should just be her parents." I saw the message before Daniel did, and I won't lie, it stung, not because I expected to go, but because of the way she phrased it. Her parents, I guess technically she's right, but it still felt like I was being erased. Daniel told her that it was fine, I wouldn't attend, but later that night he asked me, "Does it bother you that she doesn't see you as part of their world?" I told him the truth. It hurts, but I get it. Still, when they came back from the conference, Hannah came running in with her folder and said, "Mom and Dad and me went to the school." Then she paused and asked, "Why didn't you come?" I said, "That's a special thing for parents to do." And she just looked at me with this confused little frown and said, "But you help with my homework too." And that moment hit me right in the gut. Because she wasn't trying to make a statement. She was just being honest. A few days later, Daniel sat me down. He said he'd been thinking about what happened. The costume, the conference, the tension. And he thought we needed to redefine some roles. He wasn't being mean. He looked genuinely torn. He said, "You've been amazing with the girls, but I think Tara feels like she's losing control." "I don't want the girls caught in the middle," I agreed. But I also told him that I can't keep walking on eggshells. I said, "Either I'm in their lives or I'm not. I can't love them part-time based on who's comfortable that day." He didn't know what to say to that. The next week, I got a call from Erica, one of my friends, who told me she'd seen Tara at the grocery store. Apparently, Tara was venting to another mom from school about me. She said something like, "She's just too involved. It's like she's trying to prove she's the better mother." When I heard that, I actually started laughing. Not because it was funny, but because if she only knew how much I second-guess every little thing, she'd realize I'm not trying to be better. I'm just trying to do right by the girls. Things came to a head on Thanksgiving weekend. The custody schedule switched that year. So Daniel had the girls for Thanksgiving Day, and Tara had them the weekend after. We invited my parents and my brother Matt over for dinner. The girls helped me bake cookies and mashed potatoes, and they made little paper turkeys with their handprints. After dinner, we were all sitting in the living room watching Home Alone, and Lily said, "Mom doesn't really like Thanksgiving food. She orders Chinese." I said, "That sounds fun," trying to keep things light, but she added, "I told her I like your mashed potatoes better," and she got really quiet. That's when Daniel and I exchanged a look. That, oh no kind of look. 2 days later, Tara texted Daniel saying she didn't appreciate the girls comparing households. She said, "This is exactly why I don't want your wife playing mom." That one sentence broke something in me. I didn't respond. Obviously, I never do. But that night I sat in the bathtub for an hour and just cried. Not because I thought I'd done anything wrong, but because I realized this might be my life forever. Always being careful. Always being the second adult who loves them deeply, but has to love them quietly. Later that week, when the girls came back, I sat down with them at the kitchen table. I told them, "I know things feel weird between the grown-ups right now, but you never have to pick sides, okay? You can love everyone as much as you want." "That's allowed," Lily nodded, and Hannah said, "We already do." That made me smile through tears. Daniel hugged me afterward and said, "You're doing the right thing." But I told him, I don't know if there is a right thing, and honestly, that's where I'm at right now, caught in the gray. I love those girls like they're my own, but I also know I'll never fully be mom. And maybe I shouldn't try to be. I've been reading books about blended families, and one line stuck with me. Step-parents are bridges, not replacements, not intruders. Just bridges. That's what I'm trying to be now, a bridge. Even if sometimes it feels like I'm building it from both ends, praying it'll meet in the middle. Final update, 1 year later, and we finally found our rhythm. Hi everyone. I didn't expect to ever post here again, but with Halloween coming up, I've been thinking about everything that's happened in the last year. And how much things have changed since that costume post that spiraled into so much drama. It's strange how time softens things that once felt impossible. After the Thanksgiving mess, things between Tara and me stayed distant for a while. We didn't talk directly. Everything went through Daniel. I focused on being present for the girls without overstepping. School projects, bedtime routines, game nights, nothing flashy, nothing that could be mistaken as competition. But it was hard. There were moments where I felt invisible. Like I was part of the daily work, but none of the acknowledgement. When people at school events said, "Oh, are you Lily and Hannah's mom?" I'd smile and say, "I'm their stepmom." And you could see their faces shift just slightly, like they weren't sure what that meant. Still, the girls made it easy to keep showing up. They're funny and curious and growing so fast. They've started calling me Steph instead of Miss Stephanie, which I didn't correct because it just feels natural now. Then something happened in March that shifted everything. Hannah broke her wrist during recess. She fell off the monkey bars, and the school called both Daniel and Tara. I was the closest one to the school at the time, 5 minutes away. So I drove over right away. When I got there, Hannah was crying, scared, holding her arm, and all she wanted was for me to stay with her. So I did. I rode in the ambulance. I held her good hand the whole time. Tara showed up at the hospital about 15 minutes later. I braced for tension, but when she saw Hannah calm and settled, she just said, "Thank you for being with her," that was it. No edge in her voice, no sarcasm, just a mom seeing her kid was okay. That moment cracked something open. After that, things got a little easier. Tara started including me in group texts about school events. Not every message, but the ones that mattered. When the girls had a spring recital, she even waved to me from her seat. It wasn't warm exactly, but it was something. By summer, we had our first actual conversation. Not about logistics, but about life. It was at Hannah's soccer game. Sitting side by side on those metal bleachers under the blazing sun, she said, "I know you care about them. I just didn't know how to share being their mom." I told her I understood completely, that I never wanted to take her place. I just wanted the girls to have more love, not less. She nodded and said, "That's fair." It was the shortest, most important conversation I've ever had. Now, almost a year after the costume debacle, we've actually become something that feels close to a team. We text sometimes, even joke a little. She sends me photos when the girls do something cute on her weeks. And when we pick them up now, she doesn't just hand off the bags. She stays to chat for a minute. It's not perfect, but it's peaceful. And here's the part that still surprises me. This year, the girls wanted to do another group costume. I immediately hesitated. Remembering last year's fallout, I said, "Maybe you should do something with your mom this time," Lily said. "We already are. We're doing a family theme with Mom on her weekend, and another with you and Dad on yours." I laughed and asked what they had in mind. They decided they wanted to do a Wizard of Oz theme with us. Hannah's going as Dorothy, Lily as Glinda, Daniel as the Scarecrow. And they picked me to be the Tin Man. When I told Tara about it, because I wanted her to hear it directly, she actually smiled and said, "That sounds cute." Then she added, "They've been talking about it for weeks." That's when I realized, maybe this is what blending families really looks like. Not everyone getting along all the time. Not perfect harmony, just small moments of grace where love overlaps without anyone losing their place. The girls are thriving. They talk about their two homes like it's just a normal part of their world. Which it is. They know they have two moms who love them in different ways. And one dad who's doing his best to hold it all together. Last weekend, I was helping Hannah try on her costume for the dress rehearsal at school. She looked in the mirror and said, "You make everything fun, Steph," I told her. "You make it easy too." That night, when I told Daniel about it, he said, "You know, I think we're finally all okay." And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed him. This Halloween, I'm not worried about stepping on anyone's toes. I'm just happy to be part of something that works, however imperfectly. I don't know if Tara and I will ever be friends, but I respect her deeply now. I see how hard it must have been to share her girls with someone else, and I'm grateful she found a way to let me in, even a little, a year ago. I was crying in the bathroom wondering if I'd ruined everything with a silly costume. Now I'm helping the girls hot glue sequins on their wands, and Tara just texted me to ask what time we're meeting at the parade. It's not the picture I imagined when I married Daniel, but honestly it's better, because it's real. Messy, complicated, and full of love that doesn't need to compete, and that's more than enough for me.